Okay, good evening. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. All right, first prelude music was that Susan Miyamoto, who I know had to go teach a music lesson, actually, so she's no longer here. But Susan, thank you so much for your help. And let's see, we have an invocation by, Pastor Sean of Calvary Chapel and Councilmember Stewart, flag salute. Thank you.
Thank you. Please bow your head as we go before the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord God, we just come before you to give this night to you, Lord. You say in your scripture that ultimately you choose our leaders, Lord, nationally, statewide, and also locally. So, Lord, I just ask that you pour your wisdom upon them, Lord, that you give discernment for them to make this city not only a better place to live, but to work and to enjoy. Lord, I thank you for giving them a heart to serve. I thank them personally for their service. And all this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
All right, please join me in saluting the flag of our great nation. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Okay, we are going to shuffle the agenda around slightly here today, and
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to quickly call the roll.
Oh, you want to call the roll? I think
Councilmember
everybody's
Temecula?
here.
Councilmember Edwards? Here. Councilmember Nagar?
Hi, Madam Clerk.
Hello. Councilmember Stewart?
Here.
And Mayor Ron.
Hello. All right, so let's go ahead and I think with the consent of my colleagues, like to move item number 14, receive presentation and regarding cannabis community poll results and provide direction on various related items. Can we start with the reports, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I believe we have a presentation that should be coming up here in just a moment. All right, there we are. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Before we get into the details of this presentation, we wanted to take a moment to explain how the item before you is set up for procedural purposes. Given the complexity of the item and the need for staff to adequately capture the City Council's direction on various discussion points, we have set up the presentation with multiple breaks for questions, comments, and direction. First, we will provide a quick background of how we got here, followed by a detailed review of the city's current ordinance as it exists today. We will then pause for council questions. Next, we will receive a presentation by our consultants, FM3, regarding the cannabis community poll results. We will then take council questions related to the polling, followed by public comments and subcommittee comments. Finally, we will seek direction on the various discussion points related to the ordinance. Those discussion points will include the following items: whether or not the City Council wishes to amend the existing ordinance in any capacity. If not, whether or not the Council wishes to affirm the existing ordinance by public vote. If the Council does wish to amend the ordinance, what would you like to change related to the regulation of medicinal marijuana use? And if applicable, what would you like to change related to the regulation of recreational marijuana use? And is such amendment desired through a council-adopted ordinance, a legislative action, or through a public vote? Finally, staff will look to receive direction on community workshops and any other related items. We'll now move into the actual presentation and review a little bit of background. On November 8, 2016, the voters of the state of California passed Proposition 64, legalizing recreational use of cannabis by persons 21 years of age and over, and creating a related state regulatory and licensing system. Prop 64, also known as the Control, Regulate, and Tax Adult Use of Marijuana Act, AMA, preserved the ability of local governments to regulate, license, and/or prohibit commercial cannabis. In Temecula, Proposition 64 passed by a margin of 51% to 49%. On January 10, 2017, the City Council appointed Mayor Ron and Mayor Pro Tem Nagar to the Cannabis Subcommittee to review the various impacts associated with passage. On February 28, 2017, the Council provided direction to preserve flexibility with the adoption of an ordinance while taking time to study and research the various legal, legislative, land use, financial, and other factors further. The city's current ordinance, ordinance number 17-02, was introduced on May 9, 2017, and adopted on June 13, 2017. On November 9, 2017, the city hosted a regional cannabis education workshop for elected officials and staff with industry and state experts. In February 2018, as a follow-up to the regional workshop, the subcommittee provided direction to conduct a poll measuring community opinions on cannabis. The poll was conducted in early April 2018, the results of which will be presented by the consultant tonight. This brings us to today. I would like to now turn over the presentation to our Community Development Director, Luke Watson, to provide us with a detailed review of our existing ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And before we get into the poll results tonight, we thought it would be appropriate to review and go over in summary the current city regulations as they stand today. As you recall, back in early 2017, the City Council adopted ordinance number 17-02, which prohibits all recreational and medicinal commercial marijuana activity within the city. So that means that it's a prohibition against the cultivation, possession, manufacture, distribution, processing, storing, laboratory testing, labeling, transportation, delivery, or sale of marijuana or marijuana products, whether or not for profit. Ordinance 1702 did allow an exception for the delivery of medicinal cannabis to qualified patients and caregivers, and as you recall, the council took in consideration the ability for patients and caregivers to get medicinal cannabis in light of a complete commercial ban, and that's why the council decided to allow for delivery of medicinal cannabis to patients and caregivers. 1702 does allow indoor cultivation of recreational marijuana consistent with state law. So the AUMA allows for no more than 6 plants for personal use per private residence. It must be within a fully enclosed and secure accessory structure if it's not within the main structure itself, and it prohibits all outdoor cultivation. 1702 does also allow an exception for cultivation of medicinal cannabis by qualified patients and primary caregivers. So the difference between recreational at 6 plants, this would be for medical cannabis, which is 12 plants per patient or caregiver with a maximum of 24 plants per residence. Continuing on with the cultivation of medical cannabis, there are a number of other standards that it must abide by, including must be cultivated in a legally permitted single-family detached dwelling. Qualified patient or caregivers must live on the premises. Again, no outdoor cultivation. Cultivation in an accessory structure must be set back from the property line 10 feet. No cultivation of medicinal marijuana is allowed within 1,000 feet of school, community center, or park, and no cultivation is allowed on property with childcare, church, or youth-oriented facilities. That concludes the summary of our current regulations, and staff is available for council questions at this portion of our presentation.
All right, any questions? Okay, can we receive the next presentation?
Mr. Mayor will now receive the results of our cannabis community poll. And at this time, I would like to introduce Sharon Pinkerton of Fairbank, Maslin, Mullen, Metz & Associates, also known as FM3, to go ahead and present the results of the cannabis community poll. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi, thank you very much for having me this evening, Mayor, members of the council, city staff, and residents of Temecula. My name is Sharon Pinkerton, as Randy mentioned, from Fairbank, Maslin, Mullen, Metz & Associates. We were retained by the city to conduct a public opinion survey on issues related to cannabis or marijuana. So with that, I'll launch right in. Let me start by talking about our methodology. In all, we interviewed 1,037 Temecula residents who were likely to vote in the November 2018 election. The survey was conducted April 7th through 12th, and the interviews were conducted online and via telephone, landlines, and cell phones. The survey has a margin of error of plus or minus 4.4 percentage points. Okay. We start by talking about the questions related to awareness of the current local marijuana policies. The majority of Temecula residents do not know it's illegal to operate a medical marijuana dispensary or recreational marijuana business in the city. So if you look to the left to start with, we asked, as far as you know, is it legal or illegal to operate a dispensary that sells marijuana for medical purposes in Temecula? 35% believe this is illegal, 28% believe it's legal, and 37% are uncertain. So a total of 2/3, or 65%, don't know the current policy. If you look at the right, we asked, as far as you know, is it legal or illegal to operate a business that sells marijuana to adults for recreational purposes in Temecula? 24% believe this is illegal. 38% believe it's legal, and 38% are uncertain. So therefore, 3 out of 4 residents are essentially uncertain about the policy. A majority of voters are also unaware if illegal marijuana businesses are operating in Temecula, or if they are legal in surrounding cities. So again, looking to the left, we asked if it was accurate or inaccurate that currently there are multiple medical and recreational marijuana dispensaries illegally operating in Temecula. 16% said this is accurate. So the first bar shows the proportion that think is very accurate, which is just 4%, so they're certain. Somewhat accurate is 11%, so they're not so certain. And then you have 17% who think this statement is inaccurate, and 67%, or 2 out of 3, who don't know. And on the right, marijuana businesses are legal in most of the cities surrounding Temecula. 1 in 3 voters think this is accurate, with 15% saying it's very accurate, 20% somewhat accurate. Just 15% think this is inaccurate, and 51% are uncertain. So there's confusion and uncertainty about the climate around marijuana in Temecula. Okay? Next are some questions about attitudes about potential marijuana legalization policies. Okay? As was mentioned in the report, we provided respondents with a description or a little bit of information about the current law and policies in Temecula. It read, as you may know, it's currently illegal to operate any form of marijuana business in Temecula. That this includes a dispensary that provides marijuana for medical purposes, or a business that grows, produces, or sells marijuana for recreational purposes. But in 2016, California voters approved Prop 64, allowing for the recreational use of marijuana and allowing cities to establish local marijuana regulations. The Temecula city government is now considering allowing certain marijuana businesses in Temecula, taxing them, and requiring them to follow a set of rules and regulations. After hearing this information, so they have some education, we asked, do you generally support or oppose the city's current ban on all marijuana businesses in Temecula? And as the results show, 55% support the current ban, and 49% strongly support it. So basically, 90% of those who support it very strongly. There's a lot of intensity of opinion on this issue, and on both sides. The opposition, 42%, oppose the ban, and 32% oppose it strongly. So majority support for continuing the ban. Okay. 7 in 10 respondents support allowing the sale of marijuana to medical patients in concept or theory, but opinions on recreational sales and cultivation more closely mirror the attitudes on the ban overall. So the first 2 items on this slide are looking at the sale of marijuana. So we have allowing the sale of medical marijuana products recommended by a doctor to patients in order to treat diseases and illnesses. And you can see if you look to the far right, it has the total support and oppose. 71% support this overall. You have the first green bar, 48% strongly support this. 23% somewhat support this, for a total of 71%. While 20% strongly oppose it, overall 29% oppose it. Support drops significantly when asked about allowing the sale of marijuana products to adults over the age of 21 for recreational purposes. Now we see that 41% support this, with 24% strongly in support, and 58% oppose it, with 51% strongly in opposition. The next two items look at the cultivation and growing for sale in both the medical and recreational categories. So allowing the cultivation or growing of marijuana plant for sale to medical marijuana dispensaries, 45% support, 54% oppose, again with a high intensity of opposition. Allowing the cultivation or growing of marijuana plants for sale to stores that sell marijuana for recreational purposes or other businesses that make marijuana-based products, 41 support, 57% oppose, for a 16-point gap between support and opposition. A majority of voters oppose allowing storefront medical marijuana dispensaries and even more oppose recreational retail stores. So now we asked if they favor or oppose, on the left, allowing storefront medical marijuana dispensaries. And you can see here that 26% strongly favor it, 18% somewhat, for a total of 44% favor. 10% somewhat oppose it, 42% strongly oppose it, for a total of 52% in opposition. There's more opposition to allowing recreational adult use marijuana retail stores. You have 21% strongly in favor, 15% somewhat, for a total of 36%. In opposition, almost all the opposition is strongly opposed, with 61% opposed overall. There is more support for taxing recreational sales than medical marijuana dispensaries. So if it was allowed to have marijuana businesses, we asked if medical marijuana dispensaries are allowed in Temecula, do you think they should be subject to, and looking at the left, the same business license tax as other kinds of businesses in Temecula, or additional business license taxes? And you have 54% who want the same taxes, 41% who support additional taxes. If businesses that sell marijuana to adults for recreational purposes are allowed in Temecula, do you think they should be subject to, on the right, the same sales tax as other kinds of products sold in Temecula, or an additional sales tax? You have 37% that support the same tax, 59% support additional taxes. We also looked at a number of other types of marijuana-based businesses to get a sense of support or favor and opposition for each of these potential businesses, and the only one with strong support is labs that test marijuana products. So these are ranked by the proportion that strongly favor each one. That's the darker green bar on the left, and then on the right, again, you see the total favor and oppose. So the first item, allowing labs that test marijuana and related products for safety and quality and do not sell directly to customers, you get 68% support for that proposal, 25% in opposition. Support drops significantly when you ask, allowing the transportation of marijuana goods between licensed cultivators, manufacturers, and distributors, 51% to 38% opposed. Drops further when you say allowing medical marijuana dispensaries to deliver marijuana to homes and businesses. Now, this is notably different than the 71% that supported access to medical marijuana. So again, we see in concept or theory, there's support. The support declines when you start looking at it more in practice. So in this case, we have 45% favor, 51% oppose. Allowing businesses that manufacture marijuana products that do not sell directly to customers, voters are divided, 44% support and oppose, with a high proportion, 12%, the gray bar, who are uncertain. Allowing a business that cultivates, manufactures, distributes, and sells cannabis all at one location, again, nearly divided, 42% favor, 47% opposed, but also a fairly high rate of indecision. Allowing recreational marijuana businesses to deliver marijuana to homes and businesses, only 1 in 3 support, 59% opposed, with nearly half strongly opposed. Okay. We looked at opinions on regulating marijuana businesses. So what you'll see in these slides is there's a very strong support for several potential local regulations that could be implemented if marijuana businesses are made legal. So we're going to look at the first 3 items to start because they're all favored by 9 out of 10 voters. First one is prohibiting the operation of marijuana businesses within 1,000 feet from places such as child care centers, schools, and parks. 83% strongly favor this regulation, 91% overall. 9 and 10 also favor requiring the operators and employees to be subject to criminal background checks and requiring dispensaries to provide security, including cameras, alarms, and trained security guards. 8 and 10 also favor using the revenue from a marijuana tax to maintain city services, including public safety, paramedic services, street and road maintenance, youth and senior programs, general services, basically. On this side, we see that, again, 8 and 10 favor prohibiting the operation of a dispensary within 1,000 feet of any alcohol or other substance abuse treatment facility or homeless shelter, putting a limit on the hours of operation, prohibiting the operation of marijuana business in a residential zone, and 2/3 support prohibiting the operation of a dispensary within 500 feet of another dispensary. This also has a high rate of indecision at 13%, which suggests that they may not fully understand. So some people, they say they don't know because it's not intuitive to them. Prohibiting the smoking, eating, or otherwise ingesting marijuana at recreational marijuana stores, 64% favor that regulation. Right? About 6 and 10 favor this list of regulations, subjecting operators to evaluation by city staff and the sheriff's department, dedicating all the revenue from marijuana tax to increasing law enforcement. And again, note that this is significantly lower than when the tax was going to more general purposes. Allowing the operation of marijuana businesses in a commercial or industrial zone, and prohibiting marijuana business owners who have previously operated legally in Temecula for applying for an operating license. 59% favor that as well. And again, in all cases, intensity is high. The vast majority of those who favor something strongly favor it. We also have about 6 and 10 who favor limiting the growing or cultivation of marijuana for commercial purposes to warehouses or similar buildings. About half who support limiting the growing of marijuana for personal use to indoors only. Now, this next item, allowing outdoor commercial cultivation of marijuana, may strike the respondent of less of a regulation and more of an allowance, and therefore you see that the favorability drops significantly down to 31%, with 63% opposed. And the same with allowing recreational marijuana businesses to deliver to hotels, only 19%. It was, I think, around 30% for homes and businesses, but 19% to hotels. In the survey, we also presented respondents with statements from both sides of the issue. And then we asked them again if they would support or oppose continuing the ban in Temecula. And there's essentially no difference. So basically what we saw from the beginning is that voters' opinions are strong and solidified. They have intensity on both sides of the issue. Those who are intensely in favor aren't changing their mind, and those who are intensely opposed are generally staying there as well. We see from this that initially we had 49% who were strongly in favor, and after going through the whole survey and hearing some messages on each side, 49% remain strongly in support of continuing the ban. Overall, 55% and 54%, statistically no difference. Same with opposition, 32% strongly opposed to 33% strongly opposed after messages, the red bar, 42% overall, and 43% after messages. So just in conclusion, there's a good deal of confusion about the current landscape of marijuana policy in the city. The majority of voters support the city's existing ban on marijuana businesses. There is openness to medical marijuana distribution in concept, but majority opposition to medical marijuana storefronts and delivery. More voters reject recreational marijuana businesses in Temecula, particularly retail stores. Voters support allowing labs that test marijuana products as long as they do not sell directly to consumers, and a slim majority support allowing transportation of marijuana products in the city. Other types of non-dispensary businesses, such as cultivation and manufacturing, do not have support of a majority of voters. There is a high degree of interest in regulating marijuana businesses should they become legal, and messages about the pros and cons of the city's ban have very little impact on voters' opinions. That is a summary of the findings. Are there any questions?
So, Mr. Mayor, that concludes the presentation by FM3 regarding the cannabis community poll, and we're happy to answer any related council questions before our community development director gets into the presentation regarding the comparisons between the poll and our existing landscape.
All right, Mr. Comatero.
Just a quick one. A lot of numbers there.
Yes, numbers.
So forgive me if I don't have my numbers straight, but I think they're okay. The poll showed 55% supported medical marijuana, and 71% oppose dispensaries.
55% support continuing the ban.
Okay, thank you. That is what I wrote. Okay. So something 45% or close.
42%
42%,
opposed, and there's 4% who are
okay.
uncertain.
So 42% would support medicinal marijuana. Is that what you said?
Well, the question actually, just to be specific, the question asked if they would support or oppose the city's current ban on all marijuana businesses in Temecula.
Okay, so you can't necessarily assume then if they support the ban that they oppose medicinal marijuana. There's not necessarily a correlation. There is a
Right.
correlation, but not
This
number
is,
for number.
they're being asked
Okay.
about the overall ordinance, essentially.
Okay, however, with whatever that number is,
Mm-hmm.
71% oppose retail stores. So it seems like there's a.
For recreation.
Was it just for recreation?
Right.
The 71%?
Thought there was a difference between the percentages between.
Well, there were 71% who support allowing the sale of medical marijuana products recommended by a doctor to patients in order to treat diseases and illnesses. Is that what you're referring to, that 71%?
No, I'm referring to the number that oppose retail stores,
Okay,
retail distribution.
right. Let me get that exactly for you.
Councilmember Comachero, you do have a copy of the presentation before you there. Okay, thank you.
So 58% oppose allowing the sale of allowing marijuana products to adults over the age of 21 for recreational purposes. So that's just in general.
Oppose.
Oppose.
Okay.
Okay, but not related to retail sale. It is higher, and I'll find the number for you before I leave here. It is higher for storefronts.
You don't have to find the number. It just seems like an anomaly. Is there? I realize that polls sometimes don't make sense, but can you correlate those two? They just seem to be counterintuitive.
We've generally found in cities is that there's oftentimes opposition to retail storefronts, right, for recreational purposes, a strong opposition to that. And there is also often a strong opposition to medical dispensaries. And sometimes our polls, we did not ask it here, so this is not necessarily in Temecula, show that people believe that those medical dispensaries are abused by people who do not need them, and therefore that builds an opposition to those types of storefronts.
That's kind of what I was looking for. So.
But we didn't ask
yeah.
that here.
Okay, but that does seem to be
That could be
rationale,
that could
a
be
very
an
plausible rationale.
underlying cause for the lack of support.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Nagar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good questions, Mr. Comachero. Maybe I can piggyback on some of those, because it is a little, I don't know, almost somewhat canceling each other out in some areas. So it seems like the poll, the first part of it says, in theory, based on what's going on, how do you feel? And then it moves into actual what the impact is here in Temecula, and then it goes into those numbers. Would that be a fair statement?
I think it's asking, in general, do you support the concept of medical marijuana for patients who need it?
Right.
And there's strong support for that. When people start thinking about how it is provided, whether it's delivered to their homes and businesses, it's via a storefront medical dispensary, then now they're thinking about it in more practical terms, and you see the support for it decline. So in theory, they support it, but in practice, they have concerns about how actually it would be distributed.
So maybe we can just look at the numbers again to try to make sense out of this. If I understood correctly, 71% in the, let's say, the first part of the overall general said they supported rather medical marijuana.
Let me take you back to slide 7. So slide 7, we see 71% allow the sale of medical marijuana products recommended by a doctor to patients in order to treat diseases and illnesses. 71% support allowing the sale of medical marijuana recommended by a doctor.
Got it.
Okay.
So then when it starts to get into the practice, we find that in actuality, they don't want any, it appears the poll indicates no sales, or there's not as much support for sales.
You can put this back up on the screen, thank you. So if you look at the next one, allowing the cultivation or growing of marijuana plants for sale to medical marijuana dispensaries, as an example, you see the decline from 71% to 45%.
Yeah, I'll finish my question.
Okay, I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
that's okay. So we start off in general, 71% say, sure, people should be allowed to get it recommended by a doctor, et cetera. And if I'm reading this correctly, if I'm understanding it correctly, in practice, when it comes down to here in town, there seems to be less of a willingness not only for allowing it to be provided, but also on the delivery aspect as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, could you run those numbers again? Or could you just point out
Run
those
through
numbers?
to prove that point you're making?
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to prove a point. I
Well,
just
yeah,
want
yes,
to.
but you're right. So as I mentioned, so the first time at 71%, people do support and probably feel for people who have a need for medical marijuana that is supported by a recommendation from the doctor. You get a high level of support for that. We're pointing out people who are using it for medical purposes that have been established by a medical professional. When we get to the next one, allowing the cultivation or growing for sale to medical marijuana dispensaries, the support goes way down because now they're thinking about actually how we're going to distribute it. And although it's not asked in this survey, underlying reasons could be that now they're thinking about the people who might get access to it who aren't recommended by their doctor as needing it. So it becomes a more widespread concern. Then we ask in this next slide, allowing storefront medical marijuana dispensaries, and again we see support at 44%. It's very similar to the 45% on that third bar, 45% there, as it is for the storefront. Again, because potentially, not only is the concerns could be where's the storefront going to be and who's going to have access. Does this allow greater access than people who need it by their doctor? So again, to your point, there's less support for providing in the city of Temecula via storefronts or delivery.
Could you go to the delivery section again and go over those numbers?
Okay, so the third item down, allowing medical marijuana dispensaries to deliver marijuana to homes and businesses. Again, on the right, it's 45% favor. So we're seeing consistency across those numbers. So there's a drop off in the people that support the use of medical marijuana when you need it and your ability to get access to it, and the proportion that support the delivery or potentially access to it right here in Temecula. There's less support for allowing it to be delivered, a storefront, or grown.
If I may, one more question. I'm not sure I saw it here, but again, there were a lot of numbers.
Yes.
Our current ordinance allows for the cultivation of medical marijuana and also cultivation by caregivers. Was there any correlation to these results as it related to that? In other words, I don't know if we asked a direct question other than are you aware of the ordinance, but was there a question in there that says, are you okay with people who need medical marijuana growing it?
We did not ask a direct question about the ability to grow it. So I don't have that direct comparison for you.
And can you, direct comparison is good, or an extrapolation, if there is one?
Okay. Well, we asked limiting the growing of marijuana for personal use to indoors only. Now, that is not about medical marijuana, and we had 51% favor. So you're actually helping point out trends. There's a similar trend of the level of support. It stays pretty consistent. From the people who oppose the ban at around 45, 46%, there's around that number who seem to support storefront delivery, allowing indoor growing. It's around the same number. So the drop-off is coming from the people that support medical marijuana in theory versus practice. And we're seeing pretty consistent numbers among those who support it in practice when it comes to the more general allowance like this. It drops off much more when we start talking about recreational marijuana. So when they're thinking about limiting the growing of marijuana for personal use indoors only, I mean, they support that regulation. That's not saying they support allowing indoor growth, but they support the regulation on it. So I don't think there's a direct correlation for you, but I am more than happy to look closer at it and get that information to you.
And if you're going to do that, my last comment, Mr. Mayor, is conversely with recreational and growing, is there any extrapolation that we can find in your poll that would give any indication of that?
growing it versus a storefront.
Yes.
Right. Not in this poll
I
per se.
didn't think so, but.
Yeah,
okay.
but I can certainly look into it more for you. I can do some comparisons with other communities that we've done research for and get you those comparisons.
Sure,
Look
if-
for cities that are similar demographically to Temecula.
And if that's the council's will,
Are you,
certainly.
personal grow or?
Personal growth, not for sale. I'm
For
saying-
recreational use, he's,
Because I think the state's already spoken to that issue, right? So the state's already spoken to that issue. So for personal recreational use, you're allowed 6 plants per person indoor
So do you-
by law.
and for medical, it's spoken to. I
By
think
right.
this is why we didn't ask the question, is most likely is because that's already the state law. But that doesn't mean we can't tell you if there's a correlation between favoring that state law and the difference between that and storefront.
Yeah, and that's what I was looking for, like, you know what, I don't want a dispensary, and I don't really want a storefront, but, you know, and I'm okay if people grow it in their backyard. That's kind of, you know.
Right. You're looking at trying to see what is the difference between the two groups of people who feel that way. And I can look for that data for you from other sources.
Thank you, very insightful.
I was just going to point that out too, that it really, we're just following state law when, in regards to the 6 and 12 plan. We can't really do anything about that. So
Right.
that's just what I was going to point out.
But I
Just
understand your
another follow-up.
intellectual question on it.
Just to kind of sew up this question then, is it fair to say as a general statement, based on your poll results, that the citizens of Temecula, as compassionate people, are fine with patients being relieved of pain and suffering with marijuana, but they're not okay with the business of cannabis in any form? Is that a fair statement?
I think it's a fair statement that the vast majority, 71%,
Yeah.
favor those who need medical marijuana having the ability to get it when it's recommended by their doctor. But the majority oppose any form of marijuana business, recreational or medicinal, in Temecula.
Yeah, no, and that's what I said.
Right.
The majority of the citizens oppose the business of marijuana, be it medicinal or recreational.
The majority strongly support the current ban in place on all businesses and yeah, so yes.
And deliveries.
You sound like the president's press secretary. But thank you. I get it.
Yes, deliveries, all aspects, yeah.
Okay, I have one quick question, or one, sort of question. This is a significant sample size that you went out and gathered, well over 1,000 folks polled. Can you sort of put that in the context of what we typically do at a city-wide or national or state?
And I'm glad you brought that up, actually. This sample size is actually more than double what we'd normally hope to get in a city the size of Temecula. It more closely matches the sample size we'd aim for in a statewide survey. We had a very robust response to this survey, which speaks to your community's civic engagement and interest in the issue. So that's why we did it by telephone and online. So we had a lot of people who responded to the survey online, more than we normally would get in a city of this size. But the results are representative to the city as a whole, demographically.
Okay, and that was my other question. So about how many people responded to the online versus the telephone survey?
The vast majority were online. What we do is we do the online survey first, and we look at who responded in terms of what the demographics should be, in this case of like November 2018 voters, which is the sample that we pulled, and we go to the phones to make sure we get the people who are underrepresented in the online portion. And we also do additional phone calls in some of the people that are on the online version just for quality control checks. So we actually found that the online version was actually very representative. I think about a little over 100 interviews were done on the telephone.
Okay.
I think our initial goal would be around 400 interviews overall, but we got 1,000.
And then, just to follow up then, what was I didn't see it in your presentation, but saw it in earlier reports, your margin of error?
Plus or minus 4.4% is a sampling error. So you could argue that it actually should be much lower based on the 1,000, but we actually compute it based on the sampling error. We aimed for a sample of 400, and therefore we, to be conservative, report our margin of error at 4.4%.
Right. So then, getting to Mr. Comachero's point earlier, my recollection of the statistics you provided, 7 in 10 support the sale of medical marijuana in concept, in its broadest terms. But then the opposition is 52% for the sale of medical marijuana in the city, like a storefront distribution.
Correct.
Okay, plus or minus 4%.
Plus or minus 4%.
Right. So that's where I guess, I want to make sure we're careful with the language because, for a lot of these other pieces, laboratory 68%, plus or minus 4% doesn't draw that into the same region as between support and
Sure, so we
oppose. Manufacturer, same thing. That was at 47%. So your margin of error, you're still separating those data out a little bit. But that one piece, I would say at 52% plus or minus, it's, our residents didn't do us any favors by being abundantly clear on one side or the other, because if you take into account the margin of error, then there's some overlap potentially in that.
Sure. Now, it is still outside the margin of error, of the 4%. And how do we actually use the lower margin of error that one could argue we could use? As you know, online poll doesn't have the same randomization because people have the option of taking it, which is why we do not reduce our margin of error. We try to remain conservative. But there is consistency across these numbers. So, and the strength of the opposition, the high level of this strongly opposed across the board is also telling of where voters stand.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I found it interesting that the manufacture of medicinal marijuana was supported, but then when it came to delivery or transport, it was highly not supported. So it's okay for manufacturers to grow it, they just can't send it anyplace.
Generally find there's concern when people start thinking about where it's going to be in their community.
Right.
So when you manufacture it to sell it someplace else, you don't think of it as being close to where you live, shop, or go to school. It might be an industrial zone.
Right.
So these are the underlying, we can assume the underlying reasons for things. We just can't tell you quantitatively those underlying reasons.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
No, we are good.
Right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Can we have the next presentation,
Yes,
please?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was a good discussion. I know there's a lot to that. The poll covered a lot more than our ordinance actually covers, so we thought it would be appropriate to have a discussion and drill down just a little bit to look at how does the poll results compare to the actual city regulations that we have on the books. Where are they similar and where are they different, specifically just for what is on the books? So when we looked at it, generally speaking, the poll results indicate that the community supports the existing prohibition of commercial recreational cannabis, as we've just discussed, activity within the city, and these are the items that are at least double the margin of error in support and match the current ordinance. So first being the prohibition of cannabis businesses in residential zones, which is 80% support, the prohibition of cannabis businesses within 1,000 feet of schools, parks, and child care centers, prohibition of cannabis retail stores, prohibition of outdoor cultivation, commercial cultivation, and prohibition of ingestion at cannabis stores, and the prohibition of all recreational dispensaries. And again, these are double the margin error in support, and they match the current ordinance. Additionally, there's also, as we just heard, 71% in favor of allowing some kind of access. Now, what kind of access? It's unsure, but some kind of access for the community to, for patients and qualified patients and caregivers to somehow acquire medical cannabis. The one area that it is apparent that there is a difference between the ordinance on the books and the poll is that currently the city prohibits laboratory testing facilities it's included as a complete commercial ban, but the polling results show an apparent support of laboratory testing facilities that do not sell directly to customers and that are located in commercial zones. So with the exception of the laboratory testing facilities, most, if not all, of the elements of the current ordinance that is on the books are supported at almost double the margin of error. So that concludes this portion of the presentation. We're available for any questions, and if no questions, we'll move into public comments.
Quick question.
Yep.
So all the other items that you didn't mention in this brief report are the ones that are sort of sitting within the margin of error and
We just focused on the ones that had strong support,
Strongly supported.
double the margin of error. So these ones, if you're considering later tonight to alter the amendment or alter the ordinance, amend the ordinance, these ones you might want to consider as not altering, or at least take into consideration that these elements of the current ordinance are supported by double the margin of error.
okay. Ms. Edwards?
So, Luke, you said that the manufacturer was supported as long as it wasn't sold in the city, but manufactured within commercial zones. Can you explain what commercial zones would be, or where in the city that would be?
Well, generally speaking, that's all non-residential zones, non-open space zones, non-public institution type zones, so commercial. So you have service commercial, light industrial, areas like that, business park, things like that, zones like that.
Target center?
Technically, yes, that is a commercial zone.
Walmart parking lot, within the sharing of the Walmart
It's-
along
it's-
79 South?
It's technically a commercial zone, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Just to follow up to Ms. Edwards' question, she mentioned grow in commercial zones. I'm not certain I heard that. I heard testing. But
That's correct.
But grow is included in that? I did not catch it.
No, laboratory testing facilities, so it's not a cultivation facility. It's a place where there's scientific research being done on cannabis, but not necessarily being cultivated on site.
So for clarity, Ms. Edwards, in the Target Center, they can test, but not cultivate. Walmart, they can test, but not cultivate. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, let's make sure we get the lingo correct here because yeah, manufacturer is totally different. Those are the folks that are, processing the material for sale, whether it's edibles or other. And testing facilities are simply those. They don't do distribution, manufacture, anything. They are just taking product from the manufacturers and distributors in the state to have tested and certified according to the state standards. Okay.
All right, Mr. Mayor, this is the time for public comments. We do have two speakers under public comments. The first speaker is Alexandria Comitas, to be followed by Adam Redep.
Okay.
Good evening, Council. My name is Alexandria, and I have come tonight to speak on behalf of the cannabis industry. And I am well aware that there is a very negative stigma about the businesses out there. But they're not all bad. They're all not, there's a lot of good ones out there. I would like to help change that negative vibe and give some positive insight on it. I also would like to propose that the city take a conservative measure in regards to either allowing it or not allowing it in the city. I'm speaking in favor of allowing 6 retail and manufacturing companies in the light industrial areas. This would be about 1 to every 20,000 people in the city. Keeping it zoned in light industrial, I feel, would keep it secluded and discreet away from residential homes, and also keep it out of the general public's eye. So that protects the people that are using it for medicinal purposes, and also from it being an eyesore and what people fear. I also think that it would be a great learning experience if the city would maybe partner with these particular cannabis companies and then watch them for roughly around maybe 3 years. They can do it medical only, and they can watch and learn and help the community. And if the community deems it to be necessary, they can add recreational later. This will allow for close observation of these businesses and allow them to communicate freely and learn about each other and how they can work in the city together. I also think that it gives people, the residents of Temecula, they don't have to drive all the way to Paris or San Diego in order to receive safe medical grade products. And I also wanted to comment on the opposing view of the survey. I believe that the negative opposition comes from not knowing. I think that people are afraid. They don't know how they operate. And I think that that's why they believe that they should have it, but don't know how to do it. I feel like people want to know exactly how it's going to operate in order for people to receive their medical cannabis. So I think that maybe providing them with a model of what it looks like would be beneficial. in that aspect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can we have the next speaker, please?
The last and final speaker is Adam Rideau.
Good evening.
How you doing, Mr. Mayor, council members? Nice to see you all here. First and foremost, I want to say that as you provide staff direction based on the FM3 presentation, I ask that you keep our youth in the forefront of your thoughts. This is a big deal, and as a father of 3 children, 12 and under, when someone has the ability to purchase marijuana from a storefront or even from an area that's in our business area, that can affect them. So any laws or ordinances that you pass or any decisions that you make, please make sure that you keep in mind our future leaders, our youth, our future council members. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. That dispenses with the public comment. We're going to move on to, let's talk about the subcommittee. It's myself and Mr. Nagar. Mr. Nagar, do you have any comments you want to share? I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
First, it's a true pleasure working with you and your analytical mind. You cause me to look at things in different ways, and it sharpens me, so I appreciate that. This has been a long road. I can honestly tell our council colleagues and staff and people listening there, none of what we've gone through was gone through lightly. Meetings, conference calls, and when we arrived at doing the poll, it was, and I don't necessarily want to speak for you, but I think we're in the same place. We were saying, well, we just need to get some answers because we've done all this research. We've reached the end of where we personally can take this thing. We needed some input and we needed some insight. And then I just wanted to also compliment staff because along the way in working with us as a subcommittee, the level and depth of research and knowledge that you guys cultivated was magnificent. You've given us everything we need to make a decision. So that's really all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'd echo it. It's been almost 3 years we've been talking about this off and on, starting with the medical and then moving into adult use, and now, I think it's time for some serious decision making. I think tonight, one of the things that we've talked to staff quite a bit about is they're just looking for direction at this point in what the survey results mean to us, what they mean to the community, and what the potential changes, if any, to the local ordinances might look like. There's a couple of items I think that we should be addressing based on the poll results, but our community spoke, and it's relatively clear. The concern I think I have is that we typically have a pattern when we do these things, right? So in the past, when we've done, sort of major community initiatives or decision making, we spend a lot of time doing the community surveys, but we also do a lot of public outreach and education. And so, this is one of those where I think, as the state moves forward with this, and trust me, I know better than most, the state is still struggling with its own, regulatory process and trying to define both the adult use and the medical aspects of this. But as it's moving along, I think we're just scratching the surface on this. We're going to have to go back and revisit this, throughout the next several years because the landscape will certainly change. And one thing that, staff didn't necessarily talk about, but we're tracking very closely through our legislative program, are all of the bills related to cannabis that are circulating around Sacramento right now. That take some of this responsibility away from us and place it directly in the hands of our legislators in Sacramento. Pile on top of that, I think the ambiguity or lack of clear direction on the federal side as well. We're still sort of moving ahead as local government, and I kind of say we're a bit stuck in the middle on this because neither the federal or the state side has been abundantly clear about its regulatory process or its policies on this, and whether just simple fact of whether or not the federal government's going to enforce its its laws related to Schedule I drugs. And so, it's an amazing time for all of these states and local jurisdictions that are dealing with this right now. And like I say, it's kind of interesting reviewing the survey results, because I think our community spoke pretty clearly on a number of issues, and then kind of waffled and hesitated a bit, much like we've had to do up here when it comes to the medical side. And there was a little bit of confusion, let alone, I think, one of the first things I think FM3 presented to us at the very beginning was the amount of confusion generally in the public of whether or not the product is even legal or not. And so that sort of lets us know a little bit about the current state of the understanding of where we are. But I'd be interested in hearing what my colleagues have to say on this. And first, I think, piece of direction is whether or not we'd consider amending any of the ordinances, any of the current ordinances, in the city that we have right now. Mr. Comachero.
Maybe before we get there, this is by no means a normal issue. It's so complex, and we all know that. But normally, the issues we have a subcommittee comes back with a recommendation. Is there a recommendation from the subcommittee? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I mean, what are you telling us?
I'll just answer no.
Okay.
We had our meetings, we talked about this, and it was funny. I know a number of you, or I think almost everybody here was here for our youth in government, and our youth in government program. Just to let you know, Mike, it was actually kind of exactly what's happening right now happened at our youth in government. We kicked to them, all of our best and brightest high school students, this issue, and said, now deal with it. And staff basically said, okay, so here's all the things that we need you to create policy on. And sort of kind of interestingly, the youth sort of looked back at each other, looked back at staff and said, what's your recommendation? And the staff said, that's what we're asking you for, right? And I think your subcommittee is kind of saying the same thing here, Mr. Comachero, is that this is a complex enough issue that, we somewhat reserved judgment on this until we had a chance to talk about this in public.
Well said. I think I would concur. Yeah.
No, and that's a fair statement. I don't have a problem with that. I was hoping you had a recommendation, but...
And you know why I hesitated is because we went all over the place. I mean, we dove into so many issues, and then one issue contradicted another issue, which led to a tangent on another issue, and it just went around the world.
And perhaps you had made up your mind until you heard public comments or you heard what council questions were. And
truly. Yeah. And I do want to mention one other thing, because I think it's important. I was hoping you'd mention it. The governor appointed you to what committee?
Bureau of Cannabis Control. And
you are now the chairman of that committee, correct? And so I wanted to point that out.
Thanks.
No, only because this council, and in particular the mayor, is really looking at this in depth to the degree where we went to the source to ask the horse. To quote Mr. Ed, or those of you who go back that far. Anyway.
I don't remember.
In any event, I just wanted to point that out. I mean, really, we've dug into this thing.
Yeah. Well, if I may just make one recommendation, if I were to, because we could debate this. We could be here all night, but I don't think any of us want to go through all of this again. But I would tell you what my perspective is, and then we can start from there. How about that? There's a couple of areas where I think we need to clean up our ordinance. One of those has to do with the outdoor grows. Right now, we've said outdoor grow as far as medical is fine, but and Mr. Watson, I'm looking at you here, but recreational or adult use outdoor grow is prohibited.
Both medical and recreational outdoor grows are prohibited. You can have outdoor grows in an ancillary building that is completely enclosed and locked, but no outdoor open air grows for medical or recreational.
Okay, and so that that was one of those things that we debated quite vigorously a little bit ago. If you know, part of the issue, frankly, it just comes down to code enforcement. You know, and you know, I think we have consistency on both how we deal with the medical and the adult use side for that issue. Now, the other one I struggle with is the mobile distribution. You know, just from what I've been seeing and hearing about at the state level and with other states, mobile distribution is having all sorts of issues, and I do know that law enforcement struggles with that quite deeply, both as targets for criminal activity, but also, you know, the nature of that business. It's, you know, it's supposed to be regulated as though it were sort of a pizza delivery service. You order that product, that product comes to your door. They carry no more than what is allowed by the orders that are received, and yet, you know, we know quite the opposite, that many of the mobile distribution operations that are out there are basically a mobile storefront with, you know, driving around with a lot of product, and it is a target for criminal activity. And so, you know, just confirm for me that Mr. Watson, our current ordinance says for mobile distribution, says for medical purposes.
Mobile distribution is prohibited with a limited exception for delivery of medicinal marijuana to primary caregivers and qualified patients only.
Right.
So no recreational delivery is allowed.
Right, and I don't even have to ask our police chief, because I just don't want to have to drag her all the way down to the podium, but a nod from the back of the room would say that, you know, mobile distribution purely to that as described in our ordinance is not the only thing that's occurring in our city currently.
Right.
So, she nodded.
Yes.
All right. So absolutely. So I think there's a bit of a disconnect there that we should address. You know, the other thing, and you know, in talking with other states about this, state of Nevada, for instance, they're a significant tourism economy, and you know, they went ahead and moved forward on adult use before California did. And they had significant issues related to the hotels and the tourism industry related to mobile distribution and delivery. And so cities like Reno had to crack down significantly and spend a lot of their resources and time sort of monitoring that and enforcing it and running sting operations and so forth. We are also a significant tourism economy today with a lot of hotels and a lot of that going on. And my guess would be that our hotels are also receiving mobile delivery. You know, I don't know how much of that's ever been confirmed or whether we've really looked at it, but I see our chief nodding as well. And so, you know, so these are just, you know, in my mind, it's hard for law enforcement or anybody out there to be able to enforce something when, you know, we have a clear policy, but that policy is next to impossible to try and enforce. Right. Ms. Edwards.
Yeah, my comment is once the cannabis is in the delivery vehicle, how do you know whether it's for, you know, recreational or for medicinal purposes? You don't, number one. And I'll just go on to say that what I inferred from the survey, it's fairly clear that it tracks directly with the ordinance that we have in place now. But I agree that we need to make sure that we really make it clear. That ordinance has to be very clear and concise about what is allowed and what isn't allowed. So I think just by retaining the existing ordinance and making the language very, very clear, I think we do comply with what our residents stated they wanted in the poll or in the survey.
Okay. Mr. Watson.
Mr. Mayor, just one point of clarification. I did misspeak. We do allow medical grows so long as they're behind a 6-foot fence.
Right. Right. And
Outdoors?
Outdoors.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's kind of what because I was just going to look that up when I had a second, and that's the disconnect that I'm a little concerned about from a code enforcement perspective. You know, straight outdoor grows, whether it's you know, adult use or medical use. You know, that's a very difficult thing to enforce.
And if I may,
so I wouldn't mind seeing us modify the ordinance to have, you know, all outdoor or outside of the, you know, residence grows specific to ancillary structures only, not, you know, outdoor.
And I think the reason for that was space. was the amount of space that people didn't have either within their homes. We don't have basements here, and so I think that was one of the considerations that we made, but I
Right.
agree with you.
But it was before the adult use piece,
Correct.
was approved under Prop 64. And so now it creates a unique situation for our city and for code enforcement and anybody, because how do you know the difference between, an illegal grow and one that's by right? And eliminating that option and just saying, look, you have to have some sort of greenhouse or something outdoors provides at least our enforcement ability 100%. Mr. Comachero.
Oh, boy. For me, and I don't profess to speak for anybody else, but for me, the issue boils down to step one, pretty simple. Step two, very difficult. I have no problem maintaining our current ordinance as it pertains to adult use, recreational use. I think our citizens have spoken. I think it's always been our bent collectively not to allow recreational use in our city. So that's an easy one. And in fact, if we want to just dispense with that at this point in the discussion, I'd be fine with that. The issue of medicinal cannabis, and we've struggled with it over the last year or two here. We, at one time in our not too distant history, we said no to anything, period. No cannabis in Temecula. And as additional information became available, as we started to get reports from a good many of our citizens that were very credible, we came to the conclusion, and I think it's fair to say collectively we came to the conclusion, that there's a medicinal benefit to cannabis, and it does relieve pain and suffering. And if we have it within our power to help people who need it, we should exercise that power. So I think if anybody wants to debate that, fine, we can debate it, but I think we've crossed that bridge already. So are we going to make it difficult for them to get their medicine, or whatever you want to call it, or are we going to make it easier for them? And I think that's really the crux of the problem here. And for me, I would prefer to make it easier rather than more difficult. Otherwise, why are we doing it? But how do we control the downside of that? I don't have an answer for that, but step one, identify the question. So I think, that is really where we are. And I don't have an answer. I'm struggling with it like everybody else.
But I think Mr. Nagar does.
No, I don't necessarily have an answer. I concur with you. There was an evolution for us, and as we looked at it, we said it's okay to grow. We created the grow ordinance for medical. Then we had a discussion on the delivery issue, and the council voted 4-1. I believe it was 4-1 to allow deliveries. The deliveries have occurred, but we now find that they're problematic for several reasons. Getting a medical marijuana card is pretty doggone easy. So anybody who wants to use it recreationally, all they need to do is have a card, and they can be in a hotel or home and have it delivered, and hence you really can't control that recreational aspect of it, right? Or you can grow it. That's correct. At the time, the council was hoping that would make it easier for people to get, that they can call up and have it delivered. And I suppose in some instances that's helped. We are seeing instances now where deliveries are now becoming difficult to control. They're becoming crime scenes, cars being pulled over, marijuana's in the car. Hey, I'm just delivering it. It becomes very hard to enforce. And if the chief wanted to talk about that, I'd love to hear it, but I think you've already pretty much acquiesced that. One thing, and I don't have the answer, but we know that cities around us are approving marijuana dispensaries. So why it may not be uber convenient, it has grown more convenient. Case in point, you probably can go, I think, out to Winchester, or certainly to Paris. You can go to Lake Elsinore. Now,
No, not Winchester.
not
That's
Winchester,
county.
fair enough.
County hasn't done anything.
County hasn't done anything, okay, fair enough. Elsinore, Paris are the closest that I could think of.
Mr. Winchester is here
Is
tonight.
Mr. Winchester here? Hi, Andy.
Hi, Andy.
All right, all right. And so now, why that may not be super convenient, you know, half-hour drive gets you where you need to go. But, you know, what if you can't drive, okay? Or what if you're in that situation where, whatever situation, you just don't have the means? So I don't have some magic answer to that. I do know that the delivery issue has caused some issues and some problems. So maybe I'll pose this question. You know, a typical answer a question with a question. Okay, does the allowing of medical deliveries and its benefit outweigh the downside of some of the criminal activity? What's the answer to that? I don't know. Maybe we get some input from staff. I don't know, but that's one question that we have to ask. Regarding the testing, I'm okay with testing. I mean, that's another business. We're heading down toward being a college community, and, you know, and I do believe that this whole industry is changing, and I believe, as you and I have had discussions on the subcommittee, that the requirement to make strains pure, the requirement to label and track every marijuana plant that it's grown and where it goes and how it's labeled, and that it's consistent in strain, so that if you say it's going to be used for medical purposes, or if you say it does this, that the strain's pure. And I know those type of rules are being implemented. You're more qualified to speak on that, Mayor, than I am. You know, that industry in and of itself is a very clean industry. It's a scientific industry, and who knows, it might start being taught in college campuses. I don't know. So that's an interesting one. I think I agree with you, Mr. Comachero, as far as allowing dispensaries. We can probably dispense with that issue right off the bat. There is one thing, and I don't know if you're going to bring it up. You and I had talked about it, and I don't want to get out ahead of you on it, but we had talked about the industry proposing a ballot measure. Do you want to talk about that, or you want me to bring it up, or how do you want to? Does it matter?
Well, no, I mean, you know, I think we've talked about it before, at least you and I have, a little bit more carefully, and certainly Randy has our city clerk has some information on that as well. If you want to maybe share with us, you know, it's certainly an issue that other cities are facing. It's something that our city could as well. And I think in our dialogue with folks from the industry who had potentially proposed that, you know, one of the things we had mentioned to them was, you know, look, we have a particular process we do in the city when it comes to big decisions and big issues, and part of that is the community survey and polling, but the other part are, you know, workshops and public outreach and education as well. We've at least accomplished that first piece, but the remainder of it, you know, we haven't quite touched on yet. But if we can have city clerk maybe provide us a little more information on timing and so forth with that.
Yeah, we actually, in the event that this question did come up before you started to give us direction, we wanted to be prepared with that relevant information, because we did face this particular inquiry in the past few months. So I did want to share with the council that basically an ordinance, and for the benefit of the public as well, an ordinance can be amended directly by the council through legislative action or by a public vote through an initiative. An initiative can be proposed by the council, or it can be proposed by a citizen. For both, the timing and the process is set forth in the Elections Code. The estimated cost for a measure is approximately $25,000 to $40,000 per measure. With a recent law change, namely AB 765 from last year, most measures must be voted on at the city's regularly scheduled election only. Temecula's next election is November 2018, followed by November 2020, et cetera. For a council initiative for 2018, the council would need to vote on placement no later than July 24th, inferring that basically a draft ordinance would need to be finalized well before that date. For a citizen initiative, the council would also need to place the measure no later than July 24th. However, assuming the process is executed perfectly without any judicial challenges, an extremely expeditious signature gathering effort. A proponent could theoretically file a notice through mid-May, maybe next week or the week after. Practically speaking, however, the citizen initiative process typically averages 6 to 12 months, and the timing has passed for the 2018 election. So that next timing, that next cycle for a citizen initiative would be basically November 2020.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, yes.
Well, I have a comment towards Councilmember Nagar's, or Mayor Pro Tem Nagar's question, and Councilmember Comachero's about what is adequate for medical use, because we don't want to make it more difficult. And so Mike touched on this. There are now 3 ways for people who use marijuana medicinally, and we know it has a valid medicinal use. And you touched on it. They can go to some place that has a dispensary and purchase it, or they can grow 12 plants at their home, or if they have a caregiver, that caregiver can supply them, because that caregiver is also allowed to grow 12 plants. So, and you know, allowing for deliveries, I don't know what other answer we have other than those 3.
If the council wanted to maintain deliveries, okay, then maybe there needs to be a registration process of the deliverer. You need to apply for a permit to deliver medical cannabis, and there would have to be you'd have to qualify for that permit, and if you were found ever in violation of that permit, it'd be revoked. Consequently, and I'm just throwing this out there, if a stop was occurred, or if marijuana was on board a vehicle during a traffic stop, or it occurred in any other sort of crime, and the excuse of they were delivering was proffered, they'd have to show the permit. I mean, that's probably the only way I see it working.
Yeah.
But before we launch down that path, it's either that path or removing deliveries.
Right.
But before we launch down that path, I'd like to hear what staff and law enforcement feel about that, if that's viable, if it works, if it's more trouble than it's worth. I don't know.
Mr. Stewart.
Well, my understanding of this ordinance is it's a living document, so we can change it at any point. So to keep what we have in place until we get more information about this issue, I think would be a more prudent direction. As far as deliveries are concerned, I have a real issue with prohibiting deliveries just because I don't want our police officers chasing down somebody who's delivering medical marijuana to somebody who's on hospice, who can't get out of their house. You know, that to me is just wrong. So, and there's a lot of resources then would be used too that we could use for other, policing activities. And frankly, I downloaded weed maps on my phone, and there's so many dispensaries in Temecula right now anyways, you know, and I know code enforcement actually uses weed maps, by the way. So,
Well, illegal dispensaries, though.
illegal dispensaries, correct. Yeah, and same with deliveries. I mean, we could ban it, but
Right.
then we're just putting more stuff on our police department to track down something that they're not even going to get they'll get a ticket for it. I mean, it's a nonviolent crime. So it's like, what is the point in the whole banning any kind of deliveries anyways? So I'm still very much in favor of keeping the medical marijuana in place, because I've heard the testimony of people who have been using it, and frankly, most of them aren't growing it. So the fact that you allow 12 plants is almost irrelevant, because they're using the oils and stuff like that, the process part of it. So that's where the delivery is more important to someone who is housebound, and I don't want to make that person feel they're doing something illegal, trying to stay healthy, you know. So, and I don't want to put that on anybody else who's trying to buy it for their loved one either. So to me, that's wrong too. So I'm still very much in favor of the way we have our ordinance today until we have more information. And that's the beauty part. This is a living document. We can change this at any time if we determine, hey, we want to go that direction with testing facilities, and there's a huge market for it and there's money to be made, great. I say, let's look into that. But we don't know the safety of all these things yet either. So again, there's just so much unknown on this whole thing that I'd rather play it safe than be sorry later. So that's my opinion.
Mr. Mayor? Yes. I couldn't agree with you more, Stu, and I think that's my struggle as well, is, how many violations matches, one relief of serious pain. Who knows? I mean, none of us are in a position to make that equation work. So just whatever's in your gut. But Mike, I like where you were going with that, and maybe there's a way to go a little further even, where it almost becomes like a prescription service. So not only does the driver have to be authorized to drive and deliver marijuana, but he has to be en route to a bona fide sale to a patient. Maybe we can't make that perfect, or no, maybe we can't.
That's already
But
in
how
state
close
law,
can
though.
we come?
That's already in state law.
What is?
What you just said, they have to be en route. So there's no driving around with product.
Right, but how can we prove that? If the vehicle stopped, is there a form that they have to have that says, John Doe called me at 7 o'clock for a delivery, here's my note on the delivery, and here's my product, and I'm going to his house.
I don't want to speak on behalf of our city attorney, but given there's this weird gray zone that occurs in the medical where when you're trying to get information from patients, that sort of violates the patient's rights. And so as a city, I would imagine that if we tried to create something that, mandated information gathering by law enforcement for patients trying to get a delivery service, that would fall under that. And again,
The HIPAA rules?
yeah, and HIPAA, it's kind of a weird gray area as far as I understand, because it's still a Schedule I substance, and so it's still federally, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's this weird,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure we need to get into that space, because I think it would be relatively easy to challenge the legality
And
of it.
certainly, I can see what you're saying.
But
I
permitting
think
would
that's
still
the
work.
right track. And maybe that's the start of an answer. And, if today, just to throw out a number, if there are 10 violations for every patient who's helped, we may say, that's not equitable. That patient's still being helped, so you gotta look at that. But if we can tighten it somehow, maybe it's not perfect, but maybe we reduce that equation to 3 violations for one person helped, then we can live with it.
But just-
We're going to have violations. I don't care what we do tonight or next week or
Right.
next year, we're going to have criminal activity and we're going to have violations. And that's a sad state of affairs, but it's true.
But I think just the permitting in itself, applies some accountability, and it gives us a chance to enforce something if we want to do that. But yeah, I agree, you can't, we couldn't endanger a patient by having that information written down.
No,
Yeah.
Mr. Nagar.
Just, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, I'll leave the street nameless, but I think our pop team just busted, I think it had to do with cocaine sales. I'm not sure if marijuana was involved. But at some point in this discussion, I'd definitely like to hear law enforcement's perspective. One of the issues that came up when we were discussing deliveries was the roving delivery man who loaded up his truck and drove around Temecula waiting for the delivery calls.
Yeah.
He'd be able to be at your place in 10 minutes because he's already here, stocked up, ready to give you. So there wasn't a point of origin. In other words, hey, I'm coming from the parish shop, I'll be there in a half an hour, and then I'm going back to the parish shop. Or maybe I'm going to make 3 or 4 deliveries along the way. If there's going to be some sort of regulation, maybe it's regulated like that. And just for the record, so we can straighten it out, when it comes to things like hospice, in which I definitely, if you're on hospice and you need, cannabis, I'm totally there. But when you're on hospice, and I know this, I dealt with it with my mother just last July, they'll bring you the highest forms of morphine and opioids that you need. And you can call 24 hours a day, and a qualified nurse will bring them out to you. A doctor will prescribe it immediately and bring it to you within an hour, hour and a half. It is highly efficient. And if cannabis was on that list, that could be included too. No issue. Where it starts to get gray Where it starts to get gray is that cannabis card for my back, that cannabis card because I get headaches or because I can't sleep, or, all of those are valid medical issues, but it starts to get gray because there's a lot of recreational use that's being violated, it's being abused in that area.
Well, the good thing about this evening is that we don't have to make any of these decisions, right? We're just providing staff sort of guidance on what we would like to see them do a deeper dive on. A couple of thoughts I had, though. Mike, you mentioned the issue of the ballot measures, proposed ballot measure, and look, our community has spoken strongly on a number of issues and not so strongly on others. And so part of me says, from an industry perspective, we don't have to look very far, only up to San Bernardino, to know what happens when, special interests get involved with the community and start proposing their own ballot initiatives. And then a city with perhaps not the same amount of resources puts their own ballot initiative on, and you have competing measures and a lot of confusion, a lot of money going into things, and a lot of, I think, wasted effort. In a lot of respects. And at the end of the day, the initiatives were overturned in court, and now there's even more confusion about what's happening in poor San Bernardino. And part of that is because the community wasn't clear and didn't speak strongly about what their position was about their community. And so, part of what I'd like to make sure that we address this evening is the idea of continuing the workshops and public outreach and education, because I see members from the Chamber of Commerce here. I know our folks at the hospitals have a perspective. I know that we have, schools and businesses and youth that have a certain perspective on this. Our folks in the faith-based organizations as well. And many of them have come and spoken with me, and they have perspectives that I think are valuable. And we value those perspectives. However, our phone or internet-based surveys didn't capture any of that conversation, so we weren't able to call up, the churches or the businesses and ask them these questions. How would this affect you? What is your position on this? Plus or minus. And so I still think that's something that we definitely need to consider doing as part of our direction to staff.
A couple of things. Mr. Mayor, I think you have mentioned you have a desire to reach out and do some of these workshops. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Okay. And I personally don't have a problem with that. What I want to ensure if we do that is a couple of things. Being that the survey spoke so strongly, I do not want to give the citizens the false impression that regardless of the survey, we're still trying to push forward a marijuana initiative. That bothers me very much, and I think it would you as well. So if the council were to approve of you doing that, it'd have to be very, very clear and concise what the purpose of doing that is. So that's the first issue. The other issue I want to mention is the young lady who spoke, and I thought you were articulate, and there's some things that you said that I want to maybe challenge, but in a nice way, not in a I'm challenging you way. I believe in general there's a lot of ignorance about cannabis. Heck, look at how far it's come. I mean, if you think about it, and so I think it's come this far because there has been a lot of ignorance, and particularly on the medical side of it. But our citizens are pretty sophisticated. Yeah. And I mean, they really, really are. When you look at, if you just look at our demographic, you kind of get the idea. I'll put it this way. We have a very educated workforce. If you start looking at the number of college-educated families and people here, it's very, very high, and that's why a lot of businesses work here. I want to make sure I catch my train of thought. I guess overall is, and this is just kind of where it lays down for me as a Temeculan, it's just not our brand. That's kind of where it lays down. Mm-hmm. It's just not our brand. It may be Lake Elsnore's, or maybe Paris. It could be because they need the money or what have you, but we've, and I mean collectively, the business community, the citizens, we've accepted a tourism industry, a tourism brand, a wine country brand, a resort brand, a shopping brand, a restaurant brand here
A
in Old Town.
family-friendly brand.
A family-friendly brand. And we don't need the revenue that would come from cannabis, nor if it would go anywhere near affecting our brand. That's kind of what I'm saying when you start to go out to the Chamber of Commerce and the churches, and you mentioned families and things of that nature. That's kind of what I feel. It's like, you know what, just not our brand. That's kind of where I know it might sound a little generic. Maybe I put it another way. It just doesn't seem that's who we are. That's all.
I think that's what we're trying to determine. I mean, I agree with you,
Yeah.
but, you know, we want to hear from the citizens. I think there's a way to do all that. I think the idea to go out to the general public, including the business community, is a very good one. But it doesn't necessarily mean we need to put on the back burner what we're doing. As Stu said, rightfully so, this is going to be an evolutionary process. So much so that my guess is 20 years from now, a council is going to be sitting here saying, what, they were really discussing banning marijuana? You know, whether we like it or not. You know, probably in, you know, the 1920s, they had the same discussion about alcohol, and somewhere further back than that, tobacco. So, you know, it's steaming down the track, and it's coming, and I don't like it, and we may not like it, but, you know, it is what it is. That doesn't mean we should not do what we feel we need to do now. But the idea, or the numbers in the poll, looking at the percentage of our population that has either no information or bad information, that's troubling. And I think to the extent that we can go out to the public with an educational component, and as we're doing that, we're listening to what they're saying. And next year we may talk about this again, or the year after that, and then we'll have all that information to fall back on. So, we could pound this to death forever. You know, we could do poll after poll after poll, and seminar after seminar. But I think we have to do something. But always keep that, because we do need to educate the residents, because clearly from the results of the poll, they're not educated on the topic.
Well, and very good point, Jeff, that the regulatory bodies don't even know what they're doing right now. So, I mean, how can we make a decision when the people who are supposed to tell us what the regulations are can't even decide what the regulations are? So that's where I'm still in the position, let's just cool our jets, let's keep it the way it is, and let's just wait for more data.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, perhaps I agree that the thing that our residents were unsure about was what our current policies were. And I think that a lot of people, and after youth in government, we know that kids know more about marijuana than we'll ever know, right? And they do, because it is, you know, there are preventative things that are done in school, and they've got Red Ribbon Week, and they've got all that. And so, and I think that kids have heard that so much, which is not to say that we need to stop saying it to them. We need to continuously say it to them. But, and I also think our residents are familiar with marijuana, and they're savvy, like we've said. They understand what the consequences are and the way it can affect your life and your job and everything. And the one recurring sentence that was in almost every email that I received, and we received a lot of emails from people, and I think I only got one email that was pro marijuana sales, retail. Every single email said something like, "This is not Temecula. This is not Temecula. If we allow it, that is not Temecula." And so that's what you were saying, Mike. It's not Temecula. And they were adamant in that. And I do think we've heard very clearly on this survey. So perhaps before we, you know, if you want to go out and do workshops and educate people about what our ordinance is and what the city's doing, that's great. But, you know, I don't think we need to be doing general marijuana education. But I think if we want to tell them what we're doing, I think that's fine.
Well, would caveat that by saying I think we do need to do some education because, you know, the bulk of our residents didn't know whether, you know, they go to a dispensary in town, whether they're going to a legal or illegal establishment.
Well,
So
that's-
I think we do need
But
to
no,
do
that's what
that
I'm saying.
outreach.
They don't understand what laws are in place or what ordinances are in place in Temecula and what that means. So I agree with you that we need to let them know what is illegal and illegal.
Mr. Comachero.
I'd like to take a stab at a motion.
All right.
I'd like to move that we keep the current ordinances in place with the caveat that we ask staff to study the deliveries issue to see if we can't tighten it up, bring that back within 60 days, and also to start scheduling on your behalf as the teacher, workshops for the public, specifically the business community, but open to anybody who would like to attend, so that if we ever take another poll, we can see some more educated numbers. So that's my motion.
Yeah, I'll second that.
And for discussion, if we may, I have no problem with that motion if you would add the business to the business community, the church community, and that the outreach be limited to informing about the city's marijuana policies. And that, if you would amend your motion for that, and I'll just say the reason why is I'm very sensitive that we appear to be ignoring a poll, okay, and pushing marijuana.
I'm happy to amend the motion. I don't have a problem with that. But I don't think we can be naive in that, you know, 100 people get in a room and they start talking and it's going to go where it's going to go. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if it makes you more comfortable, I have no problem putting it in the motion and at least make the attempt to have it be that.
And you know what? I'm all for let's see what happens. I mean, yeah, I'm with you. You can't micromanage it all the way down to, you know, that wasn't the council's decision. You need to be quiet. Okay.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
Right. So if you don't mind amending your motion to include churches and to limit the scope of the outreach to educating on the city's policies, notwithstanding where it may go.
Yeah, although I don't think we need to specifically call out churches, although we can. I think the motion as I made it signified everybody. But if we want to, for the record, say the motion is business community, church community, and the general public, I'm fine with that.
That's fine.
I'm
That's
fine.
Yeah,
fine as well.
and I'll second that.
Can I ask for an amendment to your motion, Mr. Comachero?
You can ask.
All right. There's a couple of things still that are outstanding. I definitely agree that we need to clean up the delivery and mobile distribution. One of the things that's come up in our discussions in Sacramento that I'd like to ask staff to look at is the idea, because the distribution companies that are out there service multiple cities, multiple jurisdictions, and so forth. And I'd ask that staff look at those programs that, you know, basically put an RFP or qualifications or, you know, however we would sort of pseudo or technically license mobile distribution within the city, so that there's clear that these are the businesses that meet the Temecula standard of what we would want them operating, not just that any business from, you know, Riverside down to San Diego can come into the city and, you know, service the community, because it gets back to that issue of how do we manage and maintain and monitor that.
To tell you the truth, I'm hesitant to include that in the motion, not that it's not a good idea, but we've got the best staff around. And if we start to put in the motion specific instructions of what we want when they come back, we're limiting them.
Well, I'm not saying that's the only
think they
thing I
hear
want
the
them to look
direction,
at, but just to
you
make
know,
sure that that's clear to
Well, it's
staff,
good
that's
direction,
one of
That's
those.
but
separate.
yeah, I don't think it needs to be in the
Yeah.
motion.
And then one other thing, you know, we talked early on about the laboratory piece, and you know, it seemed that there was some, you know, potential within the community to accept laboratory testing as, you know, and the research, you know, part of this as a potential part of our industrial, commercial, or you know, use in the city, not manufacturing, not distribution, not sale. See if we could give staff direction to maybe come up with ordinance of what that might look like. Would you be comfortable with that?
I am, but I think for the purpose of cleanliness, let's vote on this motion,
Yeah.
and then let's
Do that one
make
first.
another
Okay.
motion. Yeah.
Sure.
So can we restate the motion, please?
I have no idea. The motion would be to continue with our current prohibition, the ordinance that currently bans, and direct staff to bring back within 60 days methods by which we can amend the delivery portion to tighten it up, regulate, while not degrading the ability of patients to get their medicine. So
And I'll
that's a little
second that.
further than I went the first time.
Second.
Then the next part of the motion is to schedule out a series of workshops. I'll leave it to you and staff how many you want to do for the business community, the faith-based community, and the general public. And that's
Second.
it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
And just one more comment, if I may. I'm not going to ask to amend the motion, but somewhere in the process of the looking at the delivery issue, I definitely need to hear from law enforcement. We definitely need to hear the pro, con, can it be done, that type of thing in law
Yeah.
enforcement.
Again, I think, that's direction to staff, and that's good. But,
Right.
yeah, okay.
Okay, motion and a second. Let's cast your votes. No pressure, city clerk.
A lot of amending going on over there.
Okay, and that passes 5-0.
Well, it's your meeting, go ahead.
No. A second piece, laboratory. Does somebody want to talk about that a little bit
Yeah,
more?
let me take a little stab at that. I think, we're emerging into becoming a college community, particularly with Mount San Jacinto buying the Abbott buildings. I think that there's going to be an opportunity for research, bioresearch, and also cannabis is going to be an emerging industry. There's no doubt about it. I think tapping into those industries is part of our quality of life master plan, so it's consistent with that. And so maybe we instruct staff to look at what that industry entails, okay, and where, if anywhere, it might fit into our quality of life master plan as it relates to, where it would go and does it fit into the plan.
And what security measures need to be in place.
Exactly, all of that.
I'll
yes.
second that, if that's your motion.
Great. Any other comment? All right, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Mr. Mayor, we will need to take a voice vote on this.
Voice vote.
We got you.
All right. Would you
All in
like to
favor?
call the roll there?
Or just yay?
If we can just
You
go
just
ahead
call
and
for
vote,
the
I'll go
question.
ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, that motion passes 5-0.
Can you indulge me for a second?
Always, Mr. Comachero.
We have a young man, I'm going to embarrass you. Yeah, I'm pointing at you, don't look the other way. Jaron, right? One of our youth in government.
Oh, we got a couple.
We got a couple.
Yeah.
Oh,
John. Boy, I can't believe it. Can you both come up here for a minute? I'm going to embarrass you.
You said you weren't going to embarrass them.
Well, I lied.
Here, come up to the
Just a minute.
lectern.
Yeah. Now, these two young men were part of a group of 20-something, however many, how many were there? 20 or so, who took on the roles of council and all the senior staff positions in the city for 2 mornings and actually put on a mock council meeting, and their one agenda item was this cannabis issue. So my question to you, young men, how'd we do?
Very well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, y'all went into much more depth than we ever could, and I mean, y'all had a lot more information going out, and just the way that you guys discussed, it was pretty parallel to what we were discussing during our meeting, so, and coming out here was really nice and pretty cool.
Well, I'm glad you guys came out to see a comparison, because you guys did a great job. And, it's nice to see the one side and then the other, so thanks for being here.
And we've had a year to prepare, and you had 4 hours. So,
Yeah,
I,
4 hours.
considering that, I think you did really
Sure.
well.
Well, I want to say thanks to the directors, and especially Mr. Luke Watson here. He really helped us out, and he helped me out with, everything. And I wasn't I didn't have to reinvent the wheel coming
Right.
with this new topic. So I do want to thank you, Mr. Luke Watson. So
Great, good. Community Service Director and Assistant City Manager.
Yes.
Right. It's a good thing it wasn't more than a few days ago. I'd have never remembered.
You guys did a
great.
wonderful
you,
job.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yes, sir?
You guys did a wonderful job.
Okay.
Yeah, you
thank
did.
Yep.
All right.
Hopefully we'll see you sitting up here one day.
Mr. Mayor, not to belabor the issue, but there was one other thing that did come up and that maybe we can take a position on in relation to the marijuana issue, and that was the outdoor grow issue. As it relates to, it's difficult to know what's a legal grow and what's a not a legal grow, recreational versus medical. I'd like to have staff look into that and see how we can clean that one up a little bit as well.
Okay.
And that's a
That's your
motion.
motion?
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Second that. Motion and a second. Any comment? No. Voice vote again, Madam City Clerk? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Any abstentions? No. That passes 5-0.
And just a comment for staff, those don't need to come back all together. You know, there's three distinctly different items.
Oh, no, we want to spread out the pain.
Yes,
Yeah.
or they could.
So, last issue I think we need to talk about, and Mr. Stewart, you had alluded to this earlier, and that is the weed maps, and that we have four current illegal operations in the city of Temecula. Was it a week ago, Mr. City Manager, that we held our meeting with our law enforcement and fire officials regionally? Was that last week?
I think it was 2 weeks.
2 weeks ago. Oh, time flies. Okay. So 2 weeks ago, we had convened a meeting at my request to meet with all of the folks in various fire and law enforcement, including our federal and even out to Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. And we had an amazing group of individuals join us. And among the key issues that were addressed, cannabis was one of them. And not surprisingly, law enforcement, fire, code enforcement, all of our public safety departments throughout the region are struggling with this very issue. We had our district attorney there as well, and him and I, slightly before that, ahead of that meeting, had a chance to sit down and talk. And one of the things that we struggle with deeply is our ability as a city, when we see these illicit operations going on, exactly what you said, Mr. Stewart, is being able to respond to those and immediately do something about it. As the adult use and medical use acts have sort of merged and the regulations became a bit cloudy, there is a void right now in this period of time, like you had said, where there's a big gray area and people are operating outside of the law. They know what they're doing, and the penalties and enforcement capabilities are somewhat limited. And frankly, it's just akin to a code enforcement violation, and you have a fairly challenging process that we have to go through. The district attorney's office had mentioned that they are starting a cannabis task force to identify better ways of addressing the issue and being more efficient in doing that. And we've been invited to participate in that task force and help provide sort of a local government perspective as well. But one of the things I'd like to get some consensus on from my colleagues here is that we allow staff, law enforcement, code enforcement, fire department, city attorney's office, and others to be able to work very closely with district attorney's office and others as well, sheriff's department, everyone, to basically identify policies and procedures that we can adopt as a city that says when we see an illicit operation and it pops up in weed maps, or we see it, and it's reported to us, that there's a higher level of liability and risk to those folks who choose to operate outside the law. We don't tolerate that kind of business in, an illegal bar that pops up. Why would we allow that in, an illegal cannabis operation? And so in the absence of clear guidance from the state or others, I think it's incumbent on us to come up with a very clear policy and fairly punitive policy too for both the businesses and potentially for those landowners who are allowing those businesses on their property. Because there's no consequence, on a fine of $250 while they make that up in about 10 minutes. So it's really no skin, off their back. So I'd like staff to, and law enforcement and fire and others, to work together to come up with some recommended policies and procedures where we could have a more rapid response to this problem of illicit operations. And I would seek a motion and a second.
Is that a motion?
That would be.
Second.
All right, just motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And no abstentions? Passes 5-0. And that takes care of that. All right. I will go ahead and restart the rest of the city council meeting. I know our folks have made their way back in. So let's go ahead and start with the presentations and proclamations. First one on the list is presentation of certificates of recognition to Great Oak High School cross-country teams. You could come down to the podium, please.
Do you have the names, or am I reading them?
I do not have the names.
Okay.
Oh, I do. All right. And who wants to be the representative that gets to speak at the microphone? I'm sure you've elected someone.
Never tell him. You should just say who wants to be the representative.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome. So I hear you all have had an exciting year. Can you fill us in?
Yeah, we had a great year. We won our 10th and 11th state championships since 2010. The boys team had a fantastic year. They were ranked #1 in the nation for a good portion of the year, and ended up winning their fourth state title in a row. And the girls team as well was ranked as high as #1 in the country, and ended up winning their is it fifth or sixth in a row? Sixth and seventh of the last 8 years state championship. So tremendous year for all of them, and very exciting year for all of us as coaches.
All right. And we have some proclamations there, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It makes a really good photo op if we can have everybody line up over here across the dais. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
And that way, parents, I see you got your cameras out. Just everybody kind of follow me right up here. And the mayor's going to read out your names.
You can move, don't be shy. Don't
And
be
parents,
move to the middle.
you're more than willing. You can get up. You can come on up here.
So
This
while
is
you're
this is
there,
your
I'm going to
photo
take
op.
your picture off of the
It's
screen.
also a cool photo op on the screen up there. When you're ready, sir.
Need to get a little bit closer together. Maybe
What
want
was
to
that?
turn sideways just a little, because I'm taking your picture in my monitor, so you can have it from that direction too.
Cross-country team. These are the two for the cross-country team. The rest are for the other folks. So I'll just read off their names. Sorry. Okay, so Mr. Comachero just advised me that you already received certificates from the city of Temecula, and he came down to Great Oak High School to congratulate all of you. There are two additional, however, that Mr. Nagar has. If you wouldn't mind reading one of those.
Thank you. Certificate of Achievement from the City of Temecula, presented on behalf of the City Council and the citizens of the City of Temecula to Great Oak High School, California State Champion Cross-Country Teams. The City of Temecula congratulates the Great Oak High School cross-country teams on their outstanding accomplishment and effort in earning the Division I California State Champion title. The Wolfpack also won the Southwestern League and CIF Southern Section Division I titles. We are proud of the Great Oak High School cross-country team's dedication and talent, and we wish them continued success in the sport of cross-country and with their future endeavors. It's signed by Mayor Dr. Matt Ron and by our city clerk, Randy Joel.
All right. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And that includes coaches Doug Souls and Dan Noble. On the girls' team, we have Fatima Cortez, Audrey Dang, Tori Gatelin, Ariana Griffiths, Brianna Lucas, and Sandra Flughoff. Did I get that right? Oh, look at that. And on the boys, we have Gabriel Abbeys, Carlos Carval, all right. Jacob Corgan, Gavin Corby, Ryan Shields, Tyler Tickner, and Chris Verdugo. Congratulations, everybody, for your efforts. Wonderful year. All right. And our next presentation of May is Mental Health Month proclamation. We have Dr. Walter Hasler. And you are with Riverside County Behavioral Health Commissioner. Good evening.
One of about 15. I'm also on the Regional Behavioral Health Advisory Board for Mid-County.
All right. And we have Mr. Nagar running down there again. I'm going to have you going back and forth all evening.
It's okay, I like it.
Getting in your steps.
That's right. It's good to see you again.
Yeah.
We've been seeing you here every year for how long now?
Oh, about 5.
About 5. And on a very important issue. City of Temecula proclamation. Whereas mental health is part of a person's overall health and wellness, and whereas 1 in 5 adults experience a mental health condition in any given year, and 1 in 25 adult lives with mental illness such as major depression, bipolar disorder, or schizophrenia, and whereas approximately 1/2 of chronic mental illness begins by age 14, and 3/4 begins by age 24. And whereas long delays often occur between the onset of symptoms and when individuals receive help, and whereas early identification and treatment can make a difference in successful management of mental illness and recovery, and whereas it is important to learn the symptoms of mental illness in order to get help when it is needed and support from others in accessing care, and whereas every person and community can make a difference in helping end the silence and stigma that has surrounded mental illness and discourages people from seeking help, and whereas public education and civic activities can encourage mental health, promote the wellness and recovery of those with mental health conditions, and help improve the lives of individuals and families affected by mental illness. Now, therefore, I, Matt Ron, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Temecula, hereby proclaim for the month of May 2018 to be Mental Health Month, and call upon citizens to recommit our community to increase awareness and understanding of mental health, expand the dialogue about the steps to take to promote mental health and wellness, and foster an understanding about the need for appropriate and accessible services for the mental health needs of everyone. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Feel free to.
On behalf of the Commission, thank you for that important acknowledgement. This will be on display at the May's Mental Health Month event, which is at Fairmount Park in Riverside on Thursday, May 24th from 1 to 5, and everyone's invited. It's a wonderful event. There are booths with information about the different services that the county provides, as well as health screenings, activities for children, and free lunch. They say there's no free lunch. Actually, there is there. And it's better attended each year and very well received. So that's May 24th, 1 to 5 at Fairmount Park. I also wanted to say something about the structure of the oversight of the department's activities. I didn't know anything about it until 2012 when I applied. The Behavioral Health Commission oversees the activities of the Behavioral Health Department, but the county is so large, both by population and geography, and the demographics are different in different areas and the needs are different, that actually, for administrative purposes, we're divided into 3 regions, Western, Mid-County, and Desert, and with separate administrations. And so I'm also on the regional board, and we are in Mid-County, along with Murrieta, Menifee, Paris, and then over to Hemet and San Jacinto. And that board meets Thursday afternoons, which at 3, first Thursday of each month, which can be an awkward time if you're fully employed or for students. But we very much want to get new members, particularly new members who have received services or family members of same or have some particular interest in mental health issues. I think of it as kind of a parallel with this kind of, well, democracy. You are, basically it's the people are in charge, that's the theory, so they elect you, and you're their representative. Well, it's kind of the same thing. This is citizen oversight of government operations, and it's a grassroots way of people, particularly, again, people who've received services or family and friends of same, to give input from the local level about what the needs are. And the needs are different in each region. So with your permission, I will leave. I have some applications here and some information about the regional boards. If I could leave it with the city clerk. Anyone interested, please pick it up later. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
If I may, I did want to just say something and maybe ask you a question. If somebody had a mental health need, where could they go? Is there somewhere, a number they can call, a website they can go to?
Ooh, I wish I had that number. I don't have it. There is.
Well, they can call 211.
Is it,
You can get them through 211.
so you can call 211 and you can get that information. Thank
Okay.
you. And if I may,
And also, I think you asked something similar last year, and the answer is the same. I would like to think that everyone has a family physician. And if you call that doctor's office, they should be able to direct you right away. And then in a real pinch, in a true emergency, there's 911.
The reason why I bring it up, and you're right, I did bring it up, is because the use of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication these days is unprecedented. For whatever reason, we don't know. But we've stigmatized mental health. We say mental health, and naturally we think about somebody who's gone crazy. But what we find out is that it's more prolific in people's everyday life. I can probably tell you, I think I wouldn't be overestimating if 1/3 of the people in this room right now probably suffer abnormal fear, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, obsessive compulsive disorders that make them do things that they wish they didn't do. And there's help for all those things. But they suffer because they don't want to be identified as needing mental health. And so I just wanted to say it's more normal than people realize. And if somebody's having that type of trouble or that type of problem, there is medical help available, that you do not have to live like that. That's what I wanted to say.
There is. Medical isn't the only solution.
That's true.
There are people at the schools, people in the churches, and of course, family, friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they are there.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor, yeah, just along those lines, Mayor Pro Tem Nagar, there actually is a nonprofit resource that we're fortunate to have in Temecula, and the acronym is NAMI, and I can't recall exactly everything that it stands for, but there is a phone number here if folks want to get those mental health resources. There is a Temecula Valley location, and the phone number is 951-672-2089, and we can attempt to put that information out more prominently and share that through appropriate channels as well. But they are a nonprofit, and I know they specialize in mental illness.
National Organization for Mental Illness.
Wonderful. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have presentation of Bike Month proclamation, Mr. Schwank. Community Services Commission, every year you walk down and accept the proclamation on behalf of all of those cyclists out there. Thank you.
Definitely, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to read this?
Please, sir.
Okay. City of Temecula proclamation. Whereas the bicycle is an economical, healthy, convenient, and environmentally sound form of transportation and an excellent tool for recreation and enjoyment of Temecula's scenic beauty. And whereas throughout the month of May, the residents of Temecula and its visitors will experience the joys of bicycling through organized rides, bike trains, community events, or by simply getting out and going for a ride. And whereas Temecula's bike lane and trail system, attracts bicyclists each year, providing economic, health, transportation, tourism, and scenic benefits. And whereas creating a bicycle-friendly community has been shown to improve citizens' health, well-being, and quality of life, growing the economy of Temecula, attracting tourism dollars, improving traffic safety, and reducing pollution and congestion. Whereas Hike Bike Temecula, the Bike Shop, Temecula Bicycle Coalition, Inland Empire Biking Alliance, Inland Valley Mountain Bike Association, League of American Bicyclists, and other local organizations and businesses will be promoting bicycling during the month of May 2018. And whereas these groups are also promoting bicycle tourism year-round to attract more visitors to enjoy our local restaurants, hotels, retail establishments, cultural and scenic attractions, and whereas these groups are also promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety, education in an effort to reduce collisions, injuries, and fatalities, and improve health and safety for everyone on the road. Now, therefore, I, Matt Ron, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Temecula, hereby proclaim the month of May 2018 to be Bike Month. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. It's an honor to accept this for everyone that bikes in Temecula and the people that don't. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't invite Matt Peters up. Matt's here tonight. He's sort of the face of our Bike Lanes and Trails program, and one person that's really helping to change the face of Temecula. So welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So May's Bike Month. Just a note on some of the events. Thursday, May 17th is Bike to Work Day. So we hope to get a number of employees biking to work on that day. And there will be free t-shirts for those who participate. Also, look for hikebiketemecula.org, Temecula Bike Train, and the Bike Shop for activities on Facebook for organized rides if you want to get out and take a bike ride in May.
All right. There's a lot going on this month, so like Matt says, you don't have to look far. There is a ton of rides going on, and it'll look to be Bike to Work Day will be good. We'll be making coffee, there'll be pastries, and it'll be just a great day. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. All right, next up, presentation of National Public Works Week proclamation. Mr. Pat Thomas, come on down.
Mr. Thomas. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, City of Temecula proclamation. Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support and understanding of an informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs, such as streets and highways, land development, stormwater management, public buildings and grounds, parks and infrastructure maintenance, and whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these services, and whereas the quality and effectiveness of these services, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skills of the public works personnel, and whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff public works departments, especially here in Temecula, is influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. Now, therefore, I, Matt Ron, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Temecula, hereby proclaim the week of May 20 to 26 to be National Public Work Week, the power of public works in the City of Temecula, and encourage all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing public works services and to recognize the contributions which public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. I could add more to this, like give your public works guy, buy him a hamburger, or buy an ice cream cone. Really, you guys do a fantastic job. Congratulations.
I'd just like to thank the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members for this proclamation on behalf of the 57 hardworking and dedicated public works professionals working for the city of Temecula. And with the theme of this year's National Public Works being the power of public works, I just have a short video to show you that demonstrates the things that the public works professionals do to improve the quality of life in our community. So if we have the video ready, we can play that up.
Communities depend on public works for the innovations, the solutions, and for the quality of life we enjoy each and every day.
There was audio with this too, but we didn't get the audio.
But as our communities grow,
our needs are ever changing.
With more possibilities to pursue.
Challenging the past.
To write the next chapter.
Move the communities forward.
This is Public Works, and these are the innovators changing the world. This is why we work. Because the people of Public Works believe in the power of community.
Giving our personal best.
Innovating tomorrow, today.
Always moving forward.
Before the next disaster.
For the next generation.
And our generation too.
To sustain our communities.
Save our planet.
Making a difference every day.
As Public Works, we seize the moment, realizing our full potential. Searching, solving, innovating. This is why we work, bringing together imagination, creativity, and passion. Uniting the tools and technologies for today's world. Changing the game for the future. We are Public Works.
So, Mr. Mayor, I was hoping that Pat might sing us the Public Works song.
Maybe we'll do that next year.
Oh, okay.
Oh, looking forward to it. All right, and last but certainly not least, presentation proclamation for Municipal Clerks Week, and City Clerk of the Year, our very own Randy Joel.
Once a city clerk of the year, always a city clerk of the year.
Well, this Mayor Pro Tem stuff's pretty hard. Okay. All right. Here we go. You ready? Okay. You want to do like back and forth? Or you just
No,
want
I'm
to
good.
Okay. Okay, here we go. City of Temecula proclamation. Whereas in 1984 and 1994, Presidents Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton respectively signed a proclamation officially declaring Municipal Clerks Week the first full week of May and recognizing the essential role of municipal clerks play in local government. And whereas the office of the municipal clerk is a time-honored position and vital part of local government existing throughout the world today, and whereas municipal clerks provide a professional link between the citizens they serve in their communities, local governing bodies, and governmental agencies at all levels, and whereas the responsibility of municipal clerks throughout the world vary greatly, ranging from administering elections and voter registration to human resources and tax collection to historical preservationists and beyond, whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all that they do, and whereas municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the office of municipal clerk through participation in educational programs and professional development through state, provincial, county, and international organizations. Now therefore, I, Matt Ron, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Temecula, hereby proclaim the week of May 6th through May 12th to be Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to all in the office of our municipal clerk for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to our community. Congratulations.
Thank you. Actually, Mayor Pro Tem, you said it all, and it's just a pleasure to live, work, and play in Temecula.
No video.
Oh.
No video. Okay, so next year we're going to have the Public Works Choir singing the Public Works anthem and the city clerk giving us the city clerk, municipal clerk's video. Looking forward to that next year. Okay, moving along, we are now on to public comments. Do we have any public comments this evening?
We do, Mr. Mayor. We have one public comment on a non-agendized item.
Non-agendized item. A total of 30 minutes is provided for members of the public to address City Council on items that appear within the consent calendar or a matter not listed on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. If the speaker chooses to address the City Council on an item listed on the consent calendar or a matter not listed on the agenda, a request to speak form may be filled out and filed with the City Clerk prior to the City Council addressing public comments and the consent calendar. Once speaker is called to speak, please come forward, state your name for the record. For all public hearing or council business items on the agenda, a request to speak form may be filed with the city clerk prior to the city council addressing that item. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. Can we have the speaker for this evening, please?
The speaker is Ira Robinson.
Mr. Robinson, good evening. Thanks for sticking with us.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, members of council and staff, before making any comments at all, let me tell you how terribly lucky I think your city is to have Randy Joel doing that job.
We agree.
Just an amazing job she's doing. My name's Ira Robinson. I live in the city of Temecula. And for this portion of tonight's meeting, I'm representing the Southwest Riverside County Branch 1034 of the NAACP. Branch 1034 covers the areas in and around the city of Temecula, Murrieta, Wildomar, Lake Elsinore, Canyon Lake, Menifee, Sun City, Norco, and Corona. Tonight I'm extending an invitation to the council, the staff, and the general public to attend the NAACP's first WIN, W-I-N, Women in NAACP Awards Celebration Dinner. The WIN program seeks to enhance the leadership roles of women and to serve as an advocacy vehicle for issues affecting women and children. Special invitations for the council and the city clerk have already been delivered to the city clerk. This year's WIN event will be held on Saturday, June 2nd, beginning at 7:30 p.m. at the Ronald Reagan Community Center, which is located right here in Temecula at 30875 Rancho Vista Road. The primary purpose of this WIN event is to recognize, honor, and pay tribute to 8 women for their service and accomplishments in the communities they serve, including Temecula. The event will feature, among other things, live entertainment and remarks from the current president of the NAACP's California-Hawaii region and a member of the NAACP's national board. And then the major question gets to be, what does it cost? For this event, the tickets are, there are tickets for tables of 8. The price is $400, and that comes with reserved seating and whatever perks are provided by the committee. I don't know what those perks are. I'm not on the committee. They sent me with the message. $500 for a table of 10, same thing, reserved seating, whatever perks are provided. $50 per person, unassigned to seating, $75 for 2 persons. This is probably the deal with unassigned seating. Tickets may be obtained, as indicated here, by contacting the program chair, Betty Williams, at 951-271-4669, Rosie Brady at 619-743-7614, Lynette Williams at 909-821-6163, or by mailing money and a request to the NAACP at Post Office Box 543, Lake Elsinore, California, 92530. We're hoping to see many of the council and our fellow citizens at this event on June 2nd. Now, for those who need hard copy, I have some extra hard copies if you'd like to see them, but we just encourage you to come to this first event. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Hey, I know Ms. Huffman pretty well. She serves on the advisory board for the Bureau of Cannabis with me.
That's
so
the lady.
Wonderful to see her coming down to Temecula.
Yeah, I just met her, and apparently she's a very busy lady because of her national profile. But somebody in our organization talked her into coming down. I'm looking forward to it, too.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mr. Mayor, this speaker is actually speaking on an item that council has already discussed on agenda item number 14, but Mr. Budney, if you would like to go ahead and present your comment right now.
Good evening. Having worked for the U.S. Customs Service, I will say that I am against personal use of marijuana. Okay. On the Arizona side of the Colorado River, on the I-10, is a billboard that I saw last month regarding marijuana, which reads, Arizona, potential jail time. On the California side, within sight of the agricultural inspection station, a billboard seeming to pay comment to the one in Arizona reads, California, potential good time. How about that? But no potential good time for owners of rental properties when you read last month's Valley News article entitled, Runaway Cannabis Industry Reveals a Slew of Problems for Landlords. I myself had that problem in a different state. My recollection from my college days is that when a student used marijuana more frequently, chances were more likely that he or she eventually dropped out of college. One source says that today as many as 1 out of 5 teenagers use marijuana during the last 30 days. Unconfirmed reports say that even middle school kids are using it. Most anyone, including members of the faith-based Celebrate Recovery, will tell you that marijuana is a gateway drug to hard drugs. I look at this liberalization of legalization as a green light to our kids. Go ahead and use it. And they seem like they're already doing it. Considering the upcoming primaries, in response to my letter to U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein, co-chair of the Senate Caucus on International Narcotics Control, she laments that in 2015 there were more than 50,000 overdose deaths and that we should have drug awareness and prevention efforts. But when I later followed up with another letter to her questioning how legalizing marijuana would help solve that problem, I received a more brief and boxed reply, not at all addressing the marijuana issue. The Riverside County Sheriff's Department will tell you that it is yet too early to describe any possible fallout from marijuana legalization. However, most officers that I have spoken with anticipate things will change, and apparently not for the better. I would hope that the general public be keenly aware of what the outcome is likely to be concerning any increase in accidents and crime as a result of marijuana legalization. If compared to Phoenix, Sacramento has not the moral backbone on this matter to protect families and our community. I would hope that Temecula can see its way through in order to maintain the quality of living that we have long time cherished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Budney. Is that our only remaining speaker?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Mayor Ron had to leave, and I'm happy to step in. Now's the time for city council reports. Anybody?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
This Thursday night, we have our first ever graduating class of our construction program. There's 12 individuals that made it all the way through, and I've actually got connections actually for them to actually get into the industry too. So the Carpenters Union out of Ontario is very interested in this program and would like to actually talk to a lot of these individuals. So I'm truly excited about that. And I also went to the Kent Hindergart Memorial today, which was inspiring. It was so moving. I was actually blown away. I lived here in '93 when he actually was killed. And I remember it, but it was kind of like not close enough to me to actually mean anything. But listening to the testimony of all the people who loved him and worked with him, it was very, very awe-inspiring. So that was truly an honor to be there. Also, I went to the Abbott Vascular appreciation. And that was also very interesting because here's our largest manufacturer in town, And I really wasn't quite sure. I knew they made things for the heart, but not exactly sure. And they actually gave presentations and demonstrations of their actual products and how they put them in. And then they had testimonies from 3 different individuals who actually had these stents put in, and the changes that made in their life, which was, again, very inspiring. I mean, it was a very impactful day today. And I also took part, well, I was present during the Youth in Government program, which that's always an aspiring thing to see these young people take on the roles that we all do, and the amazing job and the dedication that they put into it. I mean, they really take it seriously. So I'm always impressed every time, and this is only my 2nd year doing it, but with the involvement that these kids really, they jump in with both feet. So very cool event.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Anyone else? All righty. We'll move on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no discussion on these items unless members of the City Council request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. And Madam Clerk, is there any request to speak on consent calendar items?
There are none.
Thank you. Item 1, waive the reading of standard ordinances and resolution. Item 2, approve the action minutes of April 24th, 2018. Approve the list of demands. Those are the checks we pay. 4, approve the cooperative agreement with the County of Riverside to provide fire protection, fire prevention, rescue, fire marshal, and medical emergency services for fiscal year 2018 and 19 through 2020 to 21. 5, approve an agreement with Granicus LLC for an automated agenda and commission management system. 6, appoint members to the Old Town Local Review Board and Planning Commission. 7, approve an agreement for contractor services with Digital Mapping, Inc., DMI, for the acquisition of digital orthoimagery and associated base data. 8, approve a purchase and installation agreement with Western Audiovisual for the replacement of audiovisual equipment in the Temecula City Council chambers and conference center. 9, award a construction contract to R.J. Noble Company for pavement rehabilitation program citywide, Rancho California Road, Old Town Front Street to western city limits. 10, receive and file temporary street closures for 2018 Summer Fest events. I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Comachero, seconded by Madam Edwards. Please cast your vote.
Yeah,
Councilmember Edwards.
forgot.
There we go. And that passes 4-0 with 1 absent. At this time, I'm going to adjourn the Temecula City Council meeting in favor of the Temecula Community Services District meeting and President Jeff Comachero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Acting Mayor for an hour. I'd like to call this meeting of the Temecula Community Service District to order. Madam Clerk, why don't you go ahead with the roll since it's changed?
Director Edwards?
Here.
Director Nagar?
Here.
Director Ron is absent. Director Stewart?
Here.
President Comachero?
Here. Do we have any public comment here? Thank you. We'll continue with the consent calendar then. We only have one item. Item 11, approve the action minutes of April 24th, 2018.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. As soon as it comes up, cast your votes.
There we go.
That motion does carry 4-0 with Dr. Ron absent. Do we have a director's report? Mr. Hawkins, you've kind of been hiding over there tonight.
I have?
Yeah, kind of quiet.
Well, okay. It was the Public Works and City Clerk show, so I figured I have no video, I have no song.
No song.
Come on, make something up.
I'll make something up. Well, FYI only is the daddy-daughter date night this Friday. It's always sold out within a few days, so by far one of our more popular and heartwarming events. A reminder that our 2018 Summer Fall Guide is now available with registration beginning on Monday, May 14th. As promised, a quick shout out to our TCSD youth and government participants, Waleed, Topher, and Chino. And speaking of teens, thanks for your participation in the Teen Center Survey at temeculaca.gov/survey with your input on potential programs, activities, and design elements for any future project. So keep the surveys coming. And that, Mr. President, concludes my report.
Thank you, Kevin. Mr. Adams, got anything for us?
Nothing further tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you. Do we have any director reports? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any objection? We are adjourned.
I'll reconvene the Temecula City Council meeting. I skipped one portion that I forgot during City Council comments, so we'll do it now. We have a video for the Merchant Minute. If you can cue that up.
I'm Lindsay Hurst-Quagliata. I am part owner with my husband Joseph Quagliata here at Grapevine Cafe. And at this cafe, we have a wide variety of selections from our sandwiches, our salads, gelato. We are known for our crepes, our variety of sweet and savory. So we do have something for everybody. Whether you're gluten-free, want something sweet, want something for breakfast or lunch, we have something for everyone here, including also a big variety of coffee drinks as well. Really love being in the heart of Old Town. It's a very supportive place, and the amount of support we got when we first opened from the Temecula community, from businesses, just customers, people in general, you won't find that anywhere else. Come visit us at Grapevine Cafe. We're here 7 days a week between 4th Street and Main, right next to the old antique shop in the old brown building, and we'd love to see you.
Wow, looks yum. Thank you.
Can they come right at the end of the meeting?
You wish, yes. All right, it's the public hearing portion of our meeting. Any person may did I hear something? Okay, all right. Any person may submit written comments to the City Council before a public hearing or may appear and be heard in support of or in opposition to the approval of the projects at the time of the hearing. If you challenge any of the projects in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the city clerk at or prior to the public hearing. Item 12, approve a fee reimbursement agreement with Hone Enterprises for Temecula LLC and an economic development policy for automobile dealership fee reimbursement program at the request of Luxury Car Dealership Ad Hoc Subcommittee, Mayor Ron, and Councilmember Comachero. Can we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The Economic Development Department has been working closely with community development to recruit and secure luxury car dealerships and auto dealerships into Temecula. They're a terrific source of employment, sales tax revenue, so we like to do everything we can to secure those folks and bring them into town. Principal Analyst Lynn Kelly Lehner will go over what we've done with Hone Motors to secure that Audi dealership to come here. And then at the direction of the subcommittee, they directed us to develop a policy for future incentives to include to lure additional dealerships in town. So, Lynn?
Thank you. Good evening, members of the City Council. I am here tonight to discuss the fee reimbursement with Audi Temecula, as well as the new proposed economic development policy for an automobile dealership fee reimbursement program. Audi Temecula opened its doors to the community in March 2017. Prior to selecting Temecula as its ultimate location, Audi considered sites throughout the Temecula Valley. In 2014, Ted Hohen and representatives from Audi met with the city to discuss the possibility of construction of a new luxury car dealership. Ultimately, Audi and the city came to an informal agreement for the reimbursement of permit fees, also known as user fees, and development impact fees if Audi constructed a new dealership here in Temecula. Since its opening, Audi Temecula has created substantial economic benefit to the community through the creation of approximately 30 new employment opportunities and the generation of new tax revenues that assist in funding public services, including public safety. The dealership has developed new and expanded commercial and business facilities while enhancing the city's tax base through increased property values and consumer spending. At a meeting on January 23, 2018, the Luxury Car Dealership Subcommittee, consisting of Mayor Ron and Councilmember Comachero, recommended approval of a fee reimbursement agreement for Audi Temecula modeled after a similar agreement with Mercedes-Benz. The total cost of construction of the new dealership was approximately $17 million, and the developer paid approximately $302,000 in permit fees and diff fees. The subcommittee recommended that Audi Temecula be reimbursed 1.75% of the construction costs of the dealership, or $297,182.99. As a result of the request from Audi Temecula, as well as additional inquiries from other dealerships interested in pursuing fee reimbursements, the Luxury Car Dealership Subcommittee directed staff to create a new economic development policy on the issue. A new policy would limit the economic exposure and risk to the city. While recognizing the great economic benefit of car dealerships to the community, it will also provide an incentive for new development in the city. Future negotiations for fee reimbursements will be finalized prior to the approval of the entitlements for a proposed dealership or expansion of an existing dealership. The entire proposed economic development policy can be found as an attachment to the staff report, but the essential terms of the policy include: applicants shall complete an application to the city requesting fee reimbursements in conjunction with an application for a development plan or a major modification, whichever is applicable. The application will be considered during a city council public hearing in accordance with government code. If approved by the city council, the applicant will be reimbursed in an amount equivalent to the diff and permit fees paid and identified in the application, not to exceed the lesser of one of these three items: 75% of the verified annual sales tax revenue, net of adjustments, for the first full 4 quarters of operation. This does not include Measure S, which is a transactions and use tax. Or 1.75% of the actual construction cost of the facility, which is the maximum amount deemed to be de minimis and not trigger prevailing wages, or $250,000. Because the fee reimbursement agreement with Audi Temecula was negotiated prior to the construction of the dealership, Audi Temecula will not be subject to the terms of this new economic development policy. With that, staff recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution of the City Council approving a fee reimbursement agreement with Hohen Enterprise for Temecula LLC, also known as Audi Temecula, and an economic development policy regarding the reimbursement of fees for new or expanding automobile dealerships. That concludes my presentation. I am available for questions, and also Catherine Conniff, a representative from Audi Temecula, is here if you have any questions for her as well.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff? I don't see any. Madam City Clerk, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we have any requests to speak?
We only have one request to speak, Catherine Conniff.
And I do not see any questions of my colleagues, so at this time, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Are there council discussion? Mr. Comachero.
Just briefly, as a member of the subcommittee, I'd like to provide the report of what we went through. We learned that the commitment was made to Audi, as was stated, prior to construction of the facility. When we got into the nuts and bolts of the process and the policy, kind of felt we could do better, and maybe we were being a little bit too generous. However, we also felt that a commitment was made to Audi, and you know, we'd like to think of ourselves as a city with integrity, so we were going to honor that. But after that, we tightened it up a little bit. So that's what you see in front of you.
Very good. Any other comments?
Just a comment. Just the fact that Audi brought 30 jobs means 30 less people commuting down that freeway. And these are actual livable wage jobs. These are not, you know, minimum wage type situations. So I see a real value in this. So.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move the item and welcome Audi a year late.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Comachero, seconded by Councilmember Stewart. Please cast your votes.
Somebody's got to push that. There you go.
And that item passes 4-0 with Mayor Ron absent. That takes us to item 13 on the agenda. Approve the modification, tentative parcel map, and development plans related to PA 18-0588, PA 14-2708, PA 14-2707, and PA 16-0090 for property generally located on the northwest corner of Temecula Parkway and La Paz Road. Can we have a staff report?
Thank you. PA 18-0588 is a modification to conditions of approval for a tentative parcel map and 2 development plans associated with the previously approved Gateway to Temecula commercial project. The Gateway to Temecula is located on the northwest corner of La Paz Street and Temecula Parkway. I provided a copy of the site plan here on the current slide to orient you to the project site. When Gateway to Temecula was originally approved, an EAR was certified with it, and of course a traffic study was part of that EAR. That EAR indicated that there would be some traffic impacts at the intersection of La Paz Street and Yanez Road. In order to alleviate these traffic concerns, the developer was provided 2 alternatives in the conditions of approval for the project. The first alternative that could have been selected was that the developer would design and guarantee the installation of a traffic signal at the intersection of La Paz Street and Yanez Road. The second alternative that could have been selected was for the developer to design and guarantee the installation of a roundabout at the same intersection. The applicant has since approached staff and has requested a modification to these alternatives due to timing issues related to obtaining their certificates of occupancy, as well as their ability to complete the roundabout or signal improvements at the intersection. As a result, a third alternative has been proposed. I'll go ahead and read it right now for the record. Alternative 3, provide $500,000 to the city for roundabout or traffic signal improvements. In addition, the developer will acquire the right-of-way necessary for the construction of a roundabout. The developer will dedicate said right-of-way to the city concurrent with the closing of escrow for the purchase of the right-of-way. Developer will indemnify the city against any and all challenges, legal or otherwise, requiring acquisition of right-of-way and construction of roundabout or signal improvements. I should also note that staff has received a letter from the applicant just prior to tonight's meeting indicating that they fully accept the terms and conditions described in Alternative 3. I'll pass that letter out after my presentation for you all to review. The language of Alternative 3 was also reviewed by the City Council Subcommittee, and it was the subcommittee's will to have this item brought before the entire council for review and consideration tonight. If Alternative 3 is approved and put into the conditions of approval, it does not violate the EAR in any way. Therefore, SEQA Section 15162, subsequent EARs and negative declarations, passes for a further exemption of this alternative. Based on the information just provided, staff recommends the City Council approve the proposed modification based on the findings and subjected to the recommended conditions of approval. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions. Applicant is here as well if you'd like to speak with him. I'll go ahead and pass out that letter right now to you.
Thank you, Eric. Before we go to questions, real quick, just a question of the city attorney and or staff. I believe up to the last minute, there was a question regarding the indemnification, but that's been worked out.
That's been resolved in the letter that Mr. Jones is passing out resolves that issue.
Very good. Councilmember Comachero.
Yeah, you mentioned that, I think if I heard right, that the $500 fee would be paid at close of escrow on the right-of-way?
I'll go to that slide.
The $500,000 fee has already been deposited with the city.
Correct.
Okay, so what's the, well, my question is,
The right-of-way.
what happens if the right-of-way is not obtained? Or what's the status of the right-of-way acquisition, and what happens if it's not obtained?
That's a question maybe for the applicant. The latest that staff has been informed is that an escrow has been opened and the necessary funds from the applicant to acquire the right-of-way have been placed into escrow, but it has not closed.
What happens if it doesn't?
If it doesn't close, then the city will have the if they choose option 3 and the council approves option 3 and they deliver $500,000 and the right-of-way doesn't close, then the city has the option to install a signal instead of a roundabout.
Okay.
Councilman, I think we'll hear from the public here shortly too, but I know one of 2 property owners that's affected by the right-of-way acquisition or involved in that is here in attendance.
Great.
Maybe I can also shed some light as part of the subcommittee with Councilmember Ron. applicant entered into some sort of an agreement, I'm not certain exactly whether it's in writing or verbal, what have you, to put in a roundabout. As they began to do their due diligence and research in doing the roundabout, they found out that it's very expensive, and at the same time, a lot of the right-of-way that they needed, the owners of those properties wanted much, much more money. They wanted us to relieve them of that obligation. However, it's a condition of approval and needed to be done. They're also waiting upon certificate of occupancy. So now we're in this countdown of certificate of occupancy and fulfilling this condition. In order to help them, what we came up with, well, look, if you want to go ahead and give the city $500,000, that'll be enough for us to construct, worst case scenario, the traffic signal. However, they may have entered into some sort of agreement with the HOA over there, and if there's any sort of litigation due to breach of that agreement, we've asked that we be fully indemnified by that applicant.
That HOA would never file any legal action.
All right. Hence my question to the city attorney, and hence the question that you have in front of you. And that's the long and short of it.
Thank you, that explains it well.
There you go. Do we have any requests to speak?
We do, Mr. Mayor. We have 2 speakers under public comments.
Sounds good. I'll open the public hearing. Please call the first speaker.
The first speaker is Ken Westmeyer, to be followed by Matthew Fagan.
Mr. Westmeyer, good evening.
How are you?
Pretty good, thank you.
Normally I get to come and talk about cool tourism stuff, but today it's a little personal, so pardon my shortness, and this has been an exercise in patience for myself and the other property owner involved. So as Aaron mentioned, I'm the property owner at the southwest corner of Inez and La Paz. As I mentioned, there's been kind of a messy situation throughout this whole thing, dealing with the developer and mention of, you know, property owners wanting more money or all those things. We could talk for hours about that. Fact of the matter is the developer and the property owners has come to an agreement on getting them the right-of-way that they need to build a roundabout. I'm here tonight to ask you to reword the resolution to take out the opportunity to put in a signal. I think every opportunity to discuss with our residents and my fellow homeowners has always come out that the best thing for that intersection is a roundabout. Safety-wise, myself, undoubtable. Come hang out in my front yard if you have any questions about it. The requirements that the city put on the developer to put in the roundabout have been fulfilled. As stated, escrow's opened, escrow's been funded, they have our signatures. We're waiting on correspondence from my bank to close escrow. So to me, escrow's closed, the deal's been done, they have the land, you guys have the land to build a proper roundabout. I'm a little worried that the verbiage in the resolution still states we can put in a signal, right? So that's why I'm here asking you to restate the resolution without the term or traffic signal in the resolution. The design process has been, again, a process. Myself and the other fellow homeowners are not too pleased with the design of the roundabout that came out of the process. So we'd ask you to look at that design. The city of Temecula normally puts out very nice things. And if you look at that design, it's a bunch of sparse desert scape. And I think we have an opportunity to make an impression or a sense of space or an image of what Temecula is about to impart upon residents that travel through there rather than the desert scape that is currently designed. So if somebody could look at that and maybe do a little bit nicer design compared to the other designs we have in the Temecula, it'd be nice. Maybe Arts Council can have a contest for a design of a monument or something, not sure. So the design is a huge thing for us. But mostly we're here because at some point a roundabout needs to be built. It's been funded, everybody has their piece of the pie, and we just want to get the roundabout built. Because personally, I have vegetation to move, a bunch of fruit trees to move, got stuff to do. I can only do in certain parts of the year, so I have to plan it. And if we're leaving it with this resolution worded the way it is, it's open-ended on what could happen, just as you stated. But I'm here as the owner of the property telling you, we've come to an agreement, there is a signed agreement, and we are in escrow at this time, so there should be no questions about whether the deal is going to be done on the property or not. And I'm here for any questions if you have them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before you call the next speaker, thank you. A couple of questions either for you, Mr. City Manager, you, Mr. Thomas. Does the $500,000 build the roundabout? Is that enough?
We've been told that there's been some engineers' estimates on the price of the roundabout, and I think I've heard it ranges from $460 to $500 and somewhere in between. The city, to my knowledge, we have not done a appraisal or an engineer's estimate for those improvements. Pat, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It is probably quite possible as we sit here today that the ultimate improvements to the roundabout as proposed may exceed $500,000. I don't know if we're prepared tonight to say that that's going to cover the entire cost of those improvements.
So is it safe to say that if it exceeds the $500,000, there's a possibility we will decide not to build it? Is that a fair statement?
I think the way the condition's written, it provides the city the option to consider doing the traffic signal or the roundabout.
So if the roundabout, I'm being
The roundabout is $750,000, then the city's in a position to decide, are we going to put in $250,000 or are we going to put a traffic signal in the way the condition's written?
Okay. And then I'm not certain you can answer this, maybe the applicant or whomever, but we don't know that any escrows have closed for the property or the right-of-way for the roundabout, correct?
I'm not aware of that, but I'm trusting that what Ken said could be verified.
And was it just one property or was it more?
Two properties involved in the right-of-way.
And maybe the applicant or their representative can answer if they're both in escrow. And we can talk about that later when there's comments, but I'd like to know the answer to that question.
I have a question.
Ms. Edwards, question.
I know there was discussion amongst the subcommittee of there was going to be a horse statue in the middle of the roundabout, correct? And now we're talking about desert landscaping, so.
Well, the idea with the subcommittee was that the city has a procedure as to how it approves public art.
Right.
And so we felt that that decision rests solely with the Infrastructure Beautification Committee, and that's where it lies, whether it's going to be succulents, a horse statue, or something else.
Okay.
If the roundabout's going to be done, it'll be decided in that manner.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I believe the concept of the horse statue, which we provided by the association, has already been introduced to the Infrastructure
Yeah, we did.
Beautification Subcommittee and was approved. And so that step was taken a few months back.
Yeah, we did it already, so I just wondered if, because he's just talked about desert landscaping, I wondered if something had changed.
Mr. Stewart.
So I'm a little uncomfortable with the $500,000 number now. I do believe the roundabout is the best use for that intersection, traveling it myself often. A signal there would be almost a travesty for the area. So I think a roundabout would be the best use for that, but why aren't we receiving more money from the developer just in case? Or why do we have a $500,000 cap? Why isn't it more open-ended where we have it in there, if it goes over, they still have to cough up the money?
That's a good question, and I guess from the subcommittee's point of view, I'll explain it, in that we've conditioned them to do something. They were not able to do it in time to get their certificate of occupancy. If we hold them to that condition of approval, which we have every right to do, they cannot open. And that means they just sit there. That would be detrimental to them. They've come to us and they've told us that. So we've fashioned a way to help them out. That way is, ultimately, the city's satisfied if there's a light that goes in. I know that the citizens of Los Ranchitos would like a roundabout. If the council wanted to say we wanted more money on deposit to make sure that it's a roundabout, the council can do that. What we were doing is saying we at least want a traffic light, because it's needed, and indemnification. And that's the number that we came up with. Mr. Thomas, if you want to add to that, or Mr. Adams, feel free to add to that.
Well, the requirement for the roundabout or traffic signal was a mitigation for the traffic impacts related to the project, and the traffic signal would mitigate those impacts. The idea of the roundabout was in lieu of a traffic signal, would serve the same purpose. And we don't know exactly what the roundabout is going to cost. We won't know that until we actually bid that. But like Aaron had mentioned, the preliminary estimates that we saw were in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. So I think that's the nexus for that number.
Mr.
And I might add that the $500,000 would cover the cost of a traffic signal, which is probably fair to say that that's the lesser of the two options.
Was the estimate of 500,000 or a little bit less, including the horse?
The horse would be donated by the HOA. As a matter of fact, that was one of the directions we got from the subcommittee, was that we would actually enter into a donation agreement with the HOA for them to provide and install the horse at their cost.
Art in public places.
Okay. Any other questions right now? Please call the next speaker.
The final speaker is Matthew Fagan.
Mr. Fagan, always a pleasure, sir. And Mr. Comachero says maybe not always a pleasure, but
I'm okay with it. I'm used to it by now. Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem / Mayor for the next 35 minutes, I guess, and the rest of council. My name's Matthew Fagan. I'm representing the applicant tonight. We are in concurrence with what has been presented to the City Council tonight. We ask that you go ahead and approve this. And with that, we're just available to answer any questions. We do have members of our team here that can probably shed a lot of clarity on perhaps some of the budget numbers and some of the timing and some of the escrow questions.
Is the right-of-way necessary for the roundabout in escrow right now?
It's my understanding for both properties, yes.
And when is escrow due to close?
I'm going to turn around and ask someone who has those dates.
But is that one or both?
Now, come on up to the podium so we get you on tape for time immemorial. Your grandkids will be listening to this.
Yeah.
Hey,
I
Jeff.
hope so, right?
Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening, council. I can speak to the escrow after speaking with them today. All the signatures are signed. We have what's required by the city. We have from Patrick Thomas a signature there. What we need to construct the roundabout, all the funds have been, everything has been completely funded by Gateway. Los Ranchitos has a piece of the pie in here too. We are making contributions to that. So as of today, we are just waiting to hear from lenders, people who have liens and so forth on that. So everything's been done. I did bring with me some photocopies of the signed documents from each of the two property owners, from Los Ranchitos, from Gateway, Patrick Thomas saying that that's exactly what the city needs to accomplish that. Los Ranchitos, as everybody is aware, we are firmly in support of the roundabout and would not like to see anything else. We've been involved in getting estimates for the roundabout, and that's where we got the number as of about $450,000 to complete that. Let's see, any other questions that come to mind right now? So that's the ballpark, 450. The number could grow, it could decrease. I mean, it's an environment, it's fairly fluid out there right now with construction. So the horse statue, Los Ranchitos is also paying now for some engineering. We're working to put something in the center of the roundabout. The roundabout is fairly simple right now, kind of a desert landscape. But Los Ranchitos, at our cost, we're engineering a center monument with approximately a 10-foot high bronze horse to be placed in the center of that. We're working with city staff so that it's acceptable to everybody, and we think would be a real attribute to the area and the city of Temecula. So if we can come to some agreement with that, but currently we're working with engineering what we'd have to do to satisfy the city.
Thank you. A question, Mr. Clerk Chair?
Question. I mean, it sounds like everything is in order, and hopefully the $500,000 is sufficient. What if it's not? What would you suggest? You know, what if we go out to bid and it's $525,000?
I'd have to give that some consideration.
Well, I think there's probably two resolutions to that. Somebody funds the $25,000, or the design is downgraded to fit within the budget. What's better? You don't have to answer it now, just that, you know, it sounds like it's going to work, but I think the last thing we can do is leave the city on the hook for anything. I don't even know if we could do that. It would be could be a gift of public funds, Peter, couldn't it? For the city to help fund a developer's condition?
Yes, it could be.
Yeah. So.
I mean, it's an
It's a thought.
interesting
Hopefully
thought.
that won't happen.
It's an interesting thought. I can't control how bids will, we do have a bid now that I'm sure is still valid for the $450,000 number. I can't control how the city bids that out and what you'll receive. The association, we're entering into fiscal agreements with both of the property owners and contributing what for us is a significant number of dollars, and for the center monument there with the horse monument to satisfy the city and alleviate concerns of liability and so forth. So we're committed to it. We're financially committed to it. It would not be a happy time for us to make this financial commitment to gift this property to the city to have a signal in there.
Understood.
That would be pretty tough for us. Could we accommodate a difference of $50,000 or $100,000 if that's what the bid were for a roundabout? I don't think the association would be able to do that.
The $450,000 bid that you got, was that bid out with prevailing wage?
I don't believe that's prevailing wage, but I'd have to ask.
No,
No,
that's
it's
an
not.
issue.
Yeah.
Because if we build it,
not
it's
gonna
going to
be
have to be a prevailing wage.
30% more
Yeah.
usually.
So certainly that's a consideration.
Yeah.
Mr. Stewart?
So, I mean, you just brought up a good point. So if the developer was actually building it, he could probably build it for $450,000.
Yes.
So by dumping it into the city's hands, it could be trouble. And that's where I'm having trouble with this right now.
Well, it kicks in prevailing wage for one thing.
Yeah.
So the crux of the problem, if I understand it right, is the occupancy for the developer. He needs occupancy today or tomorrow, relatively soon. If we know that we have the funds to build the roundabout, we have the design, it's approved, we have somebody to build it, if the city would consider, in the face of the funds are committed, the association's committed, the escrow is being completed, if the city would consider relaxing the time frame to allow the Gateway to build the roundabout at the $450,000 mark, we're all ready to go. We're all ready to go. It would relieve the city of the liability of something beyond $500,000 or prevailing wages. Would you consider that?
I would be much more comfortable with that
Me
than
too.
us getting stuck with, because, yeah, the cost is going to probably escalate to 600, who knows?
The problem with that is that we lose absolutely all leverage from the developer.
Right, because he's
We'd
got
be
a
releasing
CFO
him
by
of his
then.
condition and hope everybody performs. And if they did not perform, what's the city's recourse?
Well, can't we enter into a little one-page MOU that has some some remedy?
What's,
If the developer doesn't
the answer is
perform?
what's security for?
I don't know.
Mr. Mayor, if I may interject just for a moment, if I could bring our civil engineer up, there is a cost estimate that, I think she should shed some light on what the actual cost would be.
Sure.
So if you could come up, Sherry?
Sure.
Hi, Sherry Monroe with Larry Markham's office. We do have an approved cost estimate that is based on prevailing wage that is approved by the city, that's part of the submittal package for the roundabout. That cost was, I think, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, $373, somewhere in that range. So the $450, and that is based on prevailing wage, and that's on your cost estimating form, the city's. Between that and the 500, plus the right-of-way taken out because the developer's already paying for it, you're going to be real close to that. In addition to that, you're still holding the bond, are you not, for the surety?
We do have a performance bond for the amount that you mentioned. However, there's no guarantee that it can actually be constructed for that amount.
We'd be willing to leave that in place throughout the construction. Would we?
And it was the subcommittee's point of view that the bond would be hard to collect on. It was staff and subcommittee's point of view that the bond would, the onus would be upon us to go after the bond company to get them to pay, and the bond companies are notoriously don't want to pay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we did, see, it was our thought, we did not want to take that burden. So we crafted a way to try to make everybody happy, get the developer out of jail, so to speak. And
Right, so we added 500,000 cash to that, so
Right,
it's a pretty good
exactly.
chunk.
But my colleagues have brought up the distinct possibility that that may not cover. Now, you're saying it does. So if we go ahead with the agreement as staff and the subcommittee recommended, it should all work, according to this estimate.
But
I was going to say, if an additional option, I don't know if it works for the developer, is to increase that deposit from 500, say, to 600, with the balance being refundable if it's not used, and then we're covered. There's still some risk about, but at some point you got to accept.
Mhm.
You know, what do you think of that? Does that work?
I think the option we'd probably all really like to see that you're talking about now is we'll build it, but allow them to occupy and start collecting rents.
What mechanism could we put in to ensure that it's constructed once the occupancy is agreed to?
Cash deposit, the bond that's already in place, or the occupancy on Building D, which is still under construction, and quite a ways out. You have a lot of...
oh yeah, they've got another.
Say that again?
Additional building doesn't have occupancy yet, so we could condition it on the other building and let them go forward now. I'd be comfortable with that.
I got a question. So when, let's say you guys were going to build it, the actual roundabout. Once the property is in hand, you know, the rights, how long would it take you to actually start the process and possibly even finish that roundabout?
I think we were looking at a construction schedule of about 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
I have a question too. What's the time frame for Building D?
3 months.
So it's under construction now?
Mhm. But it's not as critical as an occupy. You understand that it's not, the others are already under lease, the Starbucks, the LA Fitness, and Pizza Press. They're ready to move in.
Why can't we?
So, yeah,
Condition
so
on the.
if we move the condition to Building D
Yes.
and allowed occupancy on the current building,
We'd be thrilled with that, I think.
everything else.
Confirm with my client.
That protects us.
Yes, okay. He's nodding his head.
Okay.
Unless Building D never gets built.
It's under construction now, they
Under
said.
construction now?
Building D under construction?
Yes.
And-
About 3 months from completion. And based on the current schedule for the gateway, that means 4 or 5.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's sort this out for a minute. $500,000 gets deposited with the city, okay?
Already has.
Right. If the roundabout can get built for the 500,000, we're all good, correct? At the same time, we're gonna release the certificate of occupancy for everything except Building D, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, except that now the developer's going to build a roundabout, not the city.
Yeah, we'll need that 500,000 for that.
That'll save them prevailing wage.
So we can probably keep that
So we'd have
and
to
release it as needed, you know.
Yes.
With the release provisions on that. so.
Yes.
I'd like to hear staff's point of view on that.
Okay.
This is something that we've not really kicked around too much.
So, if I understand correctly, what you're proposing is we shift the condition of approval basically to Building D,
Yeah.
which is under construction, set to be done in 3 or 4 months, and allow C of Os to be issued tomorrow.
Correct.
And we have to refund the $500,000 that's on deposit as the security.
No,
That's what you said.
no,
We
we
release-
hold it and release it
Release it in
as needed.
phases as
We-
needed.
We pay the invoices, essentially. We'll give
Yeah.
it to you to pay the invoices as submitted.
That can probably get complicated.
Well, we have
I
to
think
maintain
the-
some security.
I think the first comment was, they couldn't put any more money into the 500,000. So if you hold that until it's done, where are they gonna fund the construction of the roundabout?
Well,
We can
I
pay.
understand. So the contractor does the work, he submits an invoice, we release the money to pay the invoice.
Oh, okay. That'll be subject to prevailing wage.
That's right. Well, if we build it, it is anyway.
Well, her estimate is, she says, is
375.
350 or 375 with prevailing wage
That's based on the city cost estimating forms.
on the city cost.
City cost estimating forms, that is what you gather security for. That's the amount that we have to provide security for, is 373,000.
So we'll still hold the bond.
Staff does not approve of the bond.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's understandable.
Yeah.
Just a clarification, the idea that the city would retain the 500,000 would be basically as a security, right? And the developer would then construct the improvements on their own, and we would just release the bonds, just like releasing of securities, or release the 500,000, just like releasing of
They would need
securities.
it to cash flow the project. So we'd have to release it in.
But the city would not be the contracting agency in that case.
Correct.
So it wouldn't kick in prevailing wage?
Or would it?
Well,
So you would use the $500,000 as cash, is really a cash bond.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're good?
Pat, are you comfortable with that?
let's be clear, they're asking for the money back.
Well, as the work is completed, though.
So this is Tony, the developer. What we're asking for, option one was to agree with what is already on the agenda and we've discussed. What's been contemplated and talked about now is we would be more than happy to go ahead and start building the roundabout. We would take the cash back, use that money to build the roundabout. You guys can hold on to the bond, and also as security, the release of Building D as David. That's what we would ask for.
That's fair.
Okay, I think it's only fair to do that, or keep the money, build it. City can do that, and we can move forward with releasing all of our building.
Can you speak up and say that again?
So option one would be exactly what you have on the agenda. We're all okay with that. We have paid our $500,000, which is more than our first share, based on the EIR, which is, I believe, 43 or 46%. So we've done that. Along with that, we've also funded the two escrows, $30,000 each from me as the developer, $10,000 from Los Ranchitos to each neighbor. The escrows are closing probably within the next week to 10 days, maximum 2 weeks, depending on the lender response. So that option is still on the table, and the city can continue with that, and we would ask for the council to approve that tonight, if you wish to do so. We have no questions whatsoever, and we are not contemplating any other option. What's been discussed again tonight, and I'm kind of surprised to hear that, is you want us to build it. We will be more than happy to do that. We have 3 bids, ranges anywhere from the $325,000 to $430,000 or $40,000 maximum. I would definitely benefit from building it myself. What I would ask for is to hold release of building B for occupancy. D as David, but everything else should be released because we have leases in place and we have penalties that are associated with it. As we speak, Starbucks has already imposed a $33,000 penalty on us because we are way late in the game to do that. So that's what we would ask for to do, option A or B as we're speaking.
So under option B, we only have the building D as
Correct.
security.
And the bond.
And the bond.
And,
Right.
let's be clear, you're asking for us to return the $500,000.
Absolutely.
All right. See, and I have a problem with that, Tony. I just.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's try this. What if the city builds it? If it's prevailing wage one way or the other, then the cost is going to be the cost. So what if the city keeps the $5,000, builds it?
500.
At $500,000, thank you. And we enter into an agreement with the developer, should the cost exceed $500,000, you pay the difference, and you open tomorrow. None of us expect it's going to go beyond $500,000, but we have to have some protection. Otherwise, we're in the middle, we don't know what to do.
And I know you have a comment, but I'll say, we're trying to help.
I'm sorry, and the security for that would be the occupancy for building D.
Right.
For the overage.
We're trying to help everybody, trying to help the association, trying to help the developer. But that seems to be a private agreement between you guys that we've kind of been drawn into. We just wanted mitigation measures for your traffic impacts. Notwithstanding, as you had said, some would prefer a traffic circle as opposed to a light.
I would.
You had something to say, Stu?
Yeah, so I'm looking at it from a standpoint, how long would it take the city to actually build that roundabout versus private sector taking it with already contractors, in their back pocket? They could probably get it done in a third the time that we're going to have to spend to put it out to bid, and that's what I'm looking at. I'd rather have it done sooner rather than later. And as much as we can stay out of it, sounds good to me too. I just can see it spiraling.
So what's our security to see that it's done?
What if can we give back half and hold the other half until certain completion of the roundabout? What if we gave 250 back?
Where the subcommittee was coming from is that our ultimate fallback, if they didn't build it, was that we would put in the traffic light with the 500,000 and we're done.
Right.
That was our ultimate fallback.
Right.
That was our security.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why giving half back, there's no guarantee that it gets done for that amount of money.
Yeah.
And we padded it. I have to tell you, I don't think the traffic signal is going to cost $500,000, but we padded it. And then there's all kinds of our administrative. We don't want to build your traffic light. Let's
Or
get
the
back to
roundabout.
that. We really don't want to build your traffic light. We would have preferred that you do it. Now that it's being pushed back onto us, we got to make sure that, number one, it's paid for. Number two, all of our administrative costs that go along with doing it and staff costs and the whole 9 yards for us to take on that responsibility. But as Councilmember Stewart said, it's probably better that you do it. But we're trying to help you.
Right.
So we find ourselves in this position and trying to help you, but we do not want to be in a compromised position.
Right. And I honestly don't think there is any compromise as far as the city is concerned. Let me tell you how. The total square footage for the retail buildings inside the Gateway Center is approximately 16,000 square foot, of which building D as David is 50% of that. And we're having you guys use that as leverage for us to build a roundabout. I think that is quite a bit of security for the city. That's quite a bit of money for us that you guys are going to tie up until we build the roundabout.
Is building D leased?
None.
And so what kind of security is that?
Though there's a lot of interest, but because it's being built under construction, it's on a hold pattern. We've got about 30 LOIs, but nothing has been signed. We're trying to figure out what kind of TI that needs to be done. You're a developer yourself, so you understand what I'm going through.
Yeah, I know.
But there's quite a bit of income coming out of that building that we're going to hold hostage. The city is going to hold it until we build the roundabout.
How did we find ourselves in this position?
What's
the genesis of this? Because when you were here last, we conditioned you and you were happy. How did we arrive?
And I can explain that if you allow me.
Please.
So, based on the environmental reports, we were to do the signal. We had numbers to do the signal. The association approached us. It took us a couple of months to put an agreement with the association. Once we agreed with the association that we will do the roundabout, then not only we went through approving through the city and with the help of the staff the signal design, but we also simultaneously put in place the roundabout design. So I took the cost and the burden of doing that, which was over $75,000 in addition, okay? So in doing that, that's why it took a little bit longer. On the top of that, yes, trying to get the neighbors to agree to give a small piece of their property, that took quite a bit of undertaking by us, association, and also the two neighbors. So those all took quite a bit of time. It was really out of my hand, out of the association and the neighbors. We just had to come together. And that takes a lot of time, negotiations and the work that we did. Today, we have both the signal and the traffic, and the roundabout. It is designed, the Mylars have been signed, ready to go. We have numbers, and we also have the general contractor ready to build either or. We want to be good neighbors. As a developer, within this community and the city, we want to be good neighbors, and we're trying to help the neighbors like Ken. They want a roundabout. We are willing to build it. I can build that within the next 7 days, starting. Okay? That's what I could do. But at the same time, based on the expertise of the civil engineer, Larry Markham's group, which is well known throughout the city and this community, we do have actual numbers for building either or. And those numbers are probably within 4 to 5% margin of error. We can do either or if you allow me to do that. But I need that money to use to build either or. But again, we want to build a roundabout to be good neighbors throughout the community.
And there's no other source of funds that you can use to build a roundabout?
Absolutely not, Mike.
Get the city's
This
money?
project, and I'm being very honest with all of you, if I was to do it again after 4.5 years, I would never build that project in the city of Temecula. I'm being very honest with you. When I started this project, I never thought in my wildest dream that I'm going to go through what I've gone through to build it for 4.5 years. This project has been in red for over 1.5 years. In red for over 1.5 years. So no, we don't have the money to spit up $500,000 to build the roundabout or $450,000.
I can also add that there is a performance bond, a surety bond that was given to the city for what was the original estimated cost of the roundabout that I believe was approximately $350,000. So we do have that security still for the construction of a roundabout.
I have another, if I may. There is an out parcel, about an acre, for the restaurant, which we have had quite a bit of interest. That's the jewel of the entire project, sitting right on the corner of Bedford Court and Temecula Parkway. That would be the northwest corner, if I may. That has not been entitled yet. That could also be held up for any reason that the roundabout doesn't get built. So not only building D as David, I'm willing to offer that property as well. We are going to start building it. Plans are going to come to the city, but as far as getting any type of occupancy, and there is no secret anymore, but it's Panera Cafe that we're probably going to come to that corner. So we could hold that up, knowing that they are as big as they are and how quickly they want to come to the center. You guys could hold that project as well in order for us to build a roundabout.
How do we do that?
May I?
Yes, please.
Are you very confident, based on, I mean, everything we're hearing today, are you very confident that that roundabout can be built for well under 500,000?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if the city, if we go on the original plan as presented tonight, where the city builds it with the money that's on deposit,
Okay.
why wouldn't you, or maybe you would be willing to indemnify the city against any increase above the 500,000?
I have been a developer for 32 years, and I have been through many development. I have no control how the city spends their money, and I don't want to be held hostage for that.
I understand that. We've been a city for 30 years in a lot of development projects, and we've seen a lot of developers go south on us. So how do we reconcile those things? How do we ensure? We want to help you. I mean, we put it on the agenda to help you.
So
how can we, the city has to have a guarantee that the condition is going to be fulfilled and the city's not going to be out of money to do that. So how can we get there?
Well, again, building D and also the 1 acre out parcel, we can leave those for the city to hold on to without any type of occupancy.
So let's do this.
And that's quite a bit of that. Now adding the 1 acre, we're talking about close to about 70% of the retail.
So let's do this, because this, we represent the whole city, okay, and not just one development project. So let's do this. If you're that confident, and I think I knew where you were coming from, if you're that confident that it can be built for $500,000 or less, we're only concerned that if it costs more, it's not coming out of the citizen's pocketbook. Indemnify the city, we'll build it. We're building a freeway interchange. We've widened bridges over freeways. We've done so many projects. I can assure you Mr. Thomas and his crew is more than capable of handling a roundabout. Find a way. We can try to decide on that now. We'll build it. The $500,000 stays. Find a way that's acceptable to the city council to indemnify us if it's over $500,000. Whatever that is, whether that is I don't necessarily want to get a deed against the property, but whether or not it's holding off on building D, or something of that. I mean, let's get creative here. I do not like negotiating from the dais. But we're doing it, and I understand the expediency of doing it. But this is where mistakes get made on both parties. Okay, is in situations like this. And I have to be honest, if I knew that this could wait 2 weeks, I'd want to continue it, because I just don't like negotiating from the dais. And this is new information. So what we had arranged was all set in place, and that was what was presented. So all this is very, very new. And again, Mr. Adams, how do you feel about where this is going? And Mr. Thorson? And I'm going to reiterate something before you say it again. I'm feeling comfortable that the money stays here with the city of Temecula, and you find a way tonight to indemnify the city if it costs more. And to Los Ranchitos, maybe you start thinking that you may have to pony up some funds, whatever that may be. Mr. Comachero alluded to that.
Or we go
The only
back to
thing I would
Or we
add.
go back to the signal.
The only thing I would add, in defense of what we're talking about and what we're negotiating here, if the roundabout, and we're responsible for building it and bidding it, if it comes in less, then we should be refunding a like amount under the $500,000 cap. So we're not going to keep $500,000 just because we're negotiating it. If it's a $400,000 capital project and that's what it costs, and those are our true costs involved in it, then we're going to be refunding $100,000 back to the developer. So whatever, I mean, I'm just sharing. I don't like negotiating like this either, but it sounds like that the association wants us to remove language that allowed the city to put in a signal, and that's where we find ourselves in this position. So that it's a roundabout or nothing at all. So I think we're trying to find a way to yes.
I mean, I think we've had that request. I don't think we've decided that. I mean, that is our protection.
Right.
Sure, and I heard that was a request. Is that also part of the agreement between the association and the developer?
I'm not sure you can do that tonight, even if everybody wanted to.
Yeah,
Because that hasn't been noticed, and
Hasn't
that's a
been
pretty
noticed.
significant change under the EIR and the conditions of approval.
So what's the change?
That, eliminating the traffic signal as one of the
okay.
city's options
So
if
we'd
you
have to-
can't build
we'd
a
have to do
roundabout,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
When we approved the project, we left it to the developer to decide whether or not it was going to be a signal or a roundabout, and to go work with the association. Either one was fine by us. That's where it needs to stay. That's exactly where it needs to stay, okay? If you feel it can be done for $500,000, you've deposited the money here, we will do it. Now, that will pay for the traffic signal. And by the way, we, as a subcommittee, and the council can decide on this, we did not feel inclined to do the work of the developer, okay? And that's why we said $500,000 for the light, and we were not going to refund the difference, okay? That was our way of saying, look, this should have been handled by you guys a long time ago. It's not our responsibility, and it is unprecedented, to be honest with you. I'm telling you, we're really trying to help you, but it is unprecedented. So that's where we were coming from. So now the deal has changed. I'm going to reiterate, if we keep the 500, we do it. They indemnify us if it's over, okay? And now Mr. Adams just brought up something which I'm okay with. If the traffic signal comes, or rather the circle comes in less than $500,000, we'll refund you the difference, okay? I'm okay with that. But you need to come up with a way tonight, right now, to indemnify us if it costs more than $500,000. I don't see a scenario where we give you the money back and just hope you perform.
Yeah.
That
No,
scenario's
I
not
don't
going to
either.
happen.
I don't either. But I think there's still the choice of either everyone accepts what's already written, as Peter just said, we can't take it out anyway.
Right.
That city has the option to put the signal in, and certainly we can cover that with the $500,000 deposit. Or you can agree to indemnify any overage. We'd be comfortable either way, wouldn't we?
That's exactly
We have agreed, and we continue to agree with the condition, the way that it's put, and we have indemnified the city on either option. We don't have an issue with that as a developer.
You've indemnified the city on the roundabout only up to $500,000, and we don't know the true cost.
The
Have a good idea.
indemnification is for any litigation that comes out of the acquisition of the property and the roundabout. So
that's different.
we would have to add a sentence to that condition that says, if the cost of the roundabout exceeds $500,000, the applicant would indemnify the city.
And I think we need to be even a little bit more forthright, okay? It is my belief that the developer is concerned the association's going to sue him, okay? It may not matter, okay? Our belief, based on past experiences, there's a possibility that the association will sue and name us, okay? It's happened before. So we don't want any part of that. That's why the indemnification.
And we've already done that, we've already agreed to that.
Yeah, which you did, yeah. So if you're okay with the agenda item as written today,
I'm okay with it.
then I'm pretty certain we'll approve it, and then, but we're telling everybody here it may result in a traffic light. It's just that simple. Unless.
And the only way it would result in a traffic light is if it doesn't get built.
If
The roundabout doesn't,
If it can't get built for 500,000.
Right.
So we'll get bids, if we're building it, we'll get bids,
Yeah.
as long as the bids are under 500,000, including a contingency, I assume,
Right.
then there's no issue.
Right.
But if it comes in at 525, it's an issue.
I'm okay with the condition the way that it's written.
Okay, so what ends up happening, let's just walk this scenario through. What ends up happening is if it costs more than $500,000, the city is going to look for somebody to pay for it, okay, whether it's going to be you, the developer, or Los Ranchitos, or we're just going to put in the light as a mitigation measure, and we're done. And that's how it's going to, that's it. Mr. Tomaszewski, did you want to say anything in relation to that? I want to make sure everybody gets heard.
Not preferable.
Come to the microphone if you don't mind.
Not preferable for the association, but we'll respect the council's decision, and we'll try to work towards the end and the outcome that we're looking for. I can't speak for the board or the association as a sole person up here tonight. We can consider anything and reapproach the developer and the city council with some thoughts. Understanding you'll make some decisions tonight.
Well, and that's fair enough. And maybe consider this for a minute. We're hypersensitive right now on many issues as it relates to spending money, because we've asked the citizens to pay more in the last election by virtue of Measure S. And so we're very careful with how that money's getting spent. We want to make sure that, I guess, I don't know what I would call it, a roundabout's nice, but not necessary. It would be something that would be a benefit to Los Ranchitos, but under the condition of having taxed our citizens, it'd be a little extra, I guess is the point.
Well, it's an amenity
It's
as
an
well,
amenity.
as well as a
That
necessity.
doesn't benefit the city
That
as a
doesn't,
whole.
that doesn't benefit the city as a whole. So we're very sensitive to that. So we're just not being obstinate. That's really where we're coming from.
I got a question.
Yes, go for it.
So, Pat, if the city were to take this over and it goes out to bid, would his contractors or the people who bid on it through him, would they also have the ability to come and bid for the city?
They're on the list.
If they have the proper licensing, if they are able, our requirements will be that the contractor pay prevailing wage. So if they're willing to bid on a job that requires them to pay prevailing wage, and they have the proper licensing and can provide the bonding requirements that the city requires, then they can absolutely submit a bid.
Prevailing wage is the key.
Okay, and me being the new guy, I guess I'm not as cynical as these guys who have dealt with this for years and decades, because I'm like, yeah, let's do it, but listening to them, it's like, okay.
Well, the difference is that, we're spending residents' money.
Right.
And so, we have to be very transparent and accountable for that. So we have to make sure we are covered. We can't take risks like you could take as an individual. So that's why.
Well, I'll give you another example too. There's many, but I'll give you one. You'll remember this real clearly when Harveston was built, and they failed to fulfill all their conditions, and they had sold homes, and there was probably 100 residents or more clamoring why the city was holding up the certificates of occupancy, and wondering why we were being the bad guys. And we'd have to say, and the developer was saying it was the city. And we were saying, no, it's not the city. Your developer needs to fulfill his conditions. So there's a number of situations like that. So we just find that
But we got to finish that story because we don't want the developer there to sound bad.
Go ahead.
The issue was a $4 million bridge over the creek, Senator Trude's Creek, and it was a big deal. And we were at a stalemate. And the president of Lennar called me and he said, Jeff, is it your contention that Lennar is conditioned to build that bridge? And he said, yes. I said, then we'll build it. And that was it. And they did. So, but sometimes it's hairy.
And it's a beautiful project.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I appreciate all the discussion and the thought that went into the discussion tonight. And I also appreciate the effort that the subcommittee took to come up with this language and the staff to make it as it is tonight. My client's very comfortable with the condition as written, and we'd like to get the council's support if we could tonight.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Fagan. Mr. Thomas, knowing that the money's been deposited, the indemnification agreement is here, when would you put out an RFP and what would be the timeline?
Well, we do have approved plans. We would have to advertise that for bids. We would then the council would then have to award a contract. It's usually a 2 to 3 month process to be able to actually get a contractor to start work on a project once we've started to advertise for bids. So we're looking at starting in probably 3 to 4 months, I would say, from now.
Okay. And we do have approved plans, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Those are stamped approved?
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to go back real quick to the idea that the developer would construct it with the city holding that $500,000. And under that scenario, if we did just keep that money while the project was under construction, we would return that immediately upon the completion of the work if the developer were to do that. So
Sounds like that's not going to work.
if that doesn't work from a timing standpoint,
Because then he's out of pocket.
Yeah, it doesn't work because he says the funds aren't available. Okay, so we have an agenda item. I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move the item as presented in the agenda.
Second.
Are there any other comments by anybody? Okay, please vote. And that passes 4-0 with 1 absent. Let's see what else.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you all.
Took us a while, but we got there.
All righty. Commission reports. How about you, Mr. Sullivan?
Nothing to report this evening, thank you.
Mr. Yeomans, congratulations on your reappointment tonight. Anything?
Thank you very much, but no comment on the planning. But in Councilman Stewart, I also attended the kindergarten today, and I concur in my compliments to the police department for making a beautiful presentation.
And so did I.
Mr. Swank.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Nagar. A couple quick items. For the 5th year in a row, we participated in the Reality Rally. So it's really fun to see the community sort of come together. I had this really good video planned where it was going to be a story of determination and perseverance where we were going to win this thing. We get going, and I look over, and we're neck and neck with Elsinore. And they looked a little worried. So I put the phone away, we put our heads down, and we finished as fast as we could. We didn't beat them, but we did come close. We were at the final station when they crossed, and we gave it our all. It was sort of a bummer. Commissioner Willis, Don Adamiak, and Tracy Courts competed with us. And I think next year, we're just from the start, we were just going to smoke them.
Already heard.
Good job.
So
Good job.
we gave it our all. And then, as we talked about earlier, this is Bike Month. We're doing Bike to Work next week, so we put together a quick video I'd like to show you.
Hi everyone, I'm Matt Peters.
And I'm Zach Schwank.
We wanted to let you know that May is Bike Month, and on Thursday, May 17th, city employees will be riding their bikes into work.
And we're really excited. The Bike Shop Temecula will be handing out t-shirts that day. We'll also have coffee and pastries. Get out there and bike, Temecula.
We also encourage local businesses to join us. For more information on bike lanes and trails, go to hikebiketemecula.org.
See you out there. So as you can see, I've already biked to work and I've obtained a t-shirt. We're really excited about this year. Matt and I have worked really hard to get this to this point, and we look forward to seeing the whole community come out and join us that day. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And by the way, that challenge you issued me, the equipment's been down, okay? So, just so you know.
I know.
Okay,
I keep
all
my
right.
eye on that, though.
I have not forgotten. All right, let's see here. Who have I missed? City manager. Or no, stop it. Public safety. Hi, Chief.
Hi, good evening. For the Temecula Fire Department, we responded to a little over, right at 710 calls for the month of April. I'm not going to break each one of them down, but in addition to those numbers, we made a little over 350 public contacts for safety education, and we were able to train almost 70 citizens within CPR, AED type CPR training. So staff's been really busy. In addition to that, we have our upcoming community workshop on May 16th for the to educate the public on the annual inspection program. And before we go on to the video, I do want to say fire season's upon us. This last weekend we had 4 fires just in and around the Temecula area. Our website's being updated to cover the Ready, Set, Go for evacuations and also defensible space stuff for our citizens so they will know how to keep their homes safe for our fire season. And there's also the CAL FIRE app that has all this on it. You can go to your phone, you can go to either app store and download the CAL FIRE app, and it will have all the information on getting ready to be evacuated and making your home defendable. And with that, we have a little video about the annual inspection program starring our Assistant Fire Marshal, Elsa.
Hi, my name is Elsa Weigel. I'm the Assistant Fire Marshal here in the city of Temecula, and I am here to discuss with you our fire annual program. The Temecula Fire Department would like to notify you that we are actively performing fire and life safety inspections on all existing businesses within our city's jurisdiction. The fire department will be conducting annual inspections on all commercial businesses, including hotels, motels, restaurants, preschools, public schools, private schools, and all multifamily type buildings. The reason for conducting these fire annual inspections is to prevent any catastrophic events that occur within the city and to make sure that all of our businesses and buildings are safe and fire compliant with state and local codes. As a courtesy to the businesses, the fire department will be hosting community workshops. We will be providing an overview of the program as well as answering any questions or concerns you may have. Please visit our website at temeculaca.gov/fire for upcoming community workshops. On behalf of the City of Temecula Fire Department, we would just like to remind everybody to stay safe.
And that's the end of my report unless there's any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Chief and Mr. Adams, if you could look into something, I've had a few firefighters come to me about station, what's the one over on Commerce Center Drive?
73?
That's 73? Yeah, we recently did a rehab there, and I get some reports that the air conditioning units aren't up to snuff and the drainage over there, there's having some trouble. Could you look into that if that's the case? I want to make sure that we did the rehab right, and of course, whatever contractors we used the right ones, okay?
You said the AC units?
Pardon me?
Yeah,
AC units and drainage out in the, I think out either in the parking lot or the rear yard.
We are currently working on that. The drainage was just almost completed. The contractor didn't fulfill his end, so I made him come back out and do the work appropriately, and the air conditioner is being evaluated.
Okay, if you can get back to us on that. I made some promises I'd get back to some of the boys.
Okay.
All right, thanks so much. All righty, Mr. City Attorney or Mr. City Manager.
You trying to get out of here? Just a couple things, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. It was mentioned by the chief, but really just a shout out to all Temecula fire personnel, regional fire personnel. Last Friday and Saturday was, fires were burning all around the city limits, from Duluth to Glen Oaks to down on the south end of town at Anza Road and 79. So we had a lot of aircraft that was in short order and knocked everything down really quick. So just appreciation to all the troops out there. Secondly, it was mentioned this evening as well, I also had the privilege of attending the 25th anniversary, honoring Deputy Kent Hindegard. And I think one of the things that we all kind of left with today, at least I did, was just this realization of the collateral damage that occurred to many individuals, not just the Hindegard family, but the young woman that was Allison that lost her life in this domestic violence call, as well as the son of the individual that shot Mr. Hindegard. He went on to commit suicide as a result of this incident. So you talk about the lives and the thread that brought everybody together today to just sort of reflect on this. It was very powerful. It was very emotional. So I appreciate the chief and all the team out there to put this on. It was very important, celebrating 25 years, believe it or not. And then lastly, it was the City Council approved this evening on consent. Senate Bill 1 is the new gas tax that was approved by the voters and the legislature. And it is a revenue stream that is going to be in jeopardy in front of everybody probably in November. We approved our first road maintenance project this evening for Ranch California Road Maintenance West. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that we're putting that gas tax into good use and the way it's supposed to be used. And we have other projects queued up for the balance of the year, and we're going to spend it as long as we have it for those appropriate uses.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Mr. City Attorney.
I have about half an hour report. No, I have nothing tonight.
We're not going to extend the meeting.
All right.
Okay.
Well, you know what? I think we adjourn in the name of Ken Hindegard. I think it's only appropriate. Anybody else have anything to say? Well, I'll entertain that motion.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.